Yes, indeedy, it is The Drive, but no Brian Wilson. More on that in just a moment. Good afternoon. It is 3:07, Friday, June 16, 2023. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and my name is Matt Murphy. It's my episode 362 with all of you on these glorious airwaves, and I am pleased and proud to be here, but I don't like why I'm here, and I'm going to tell you about that only because the man, Brian Wilson himself, has relayed some of this information on his Facebook page, and I thought I would relate it to some of you. Now, we've got lots to get into. It's a jam-packed show. We're here till 7 o'clock. Chris Weber's behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible. There's Mac Morey back in the newsroom, dishing up the bad news and delivering it in large portions. My name is Matt Murphy, and I'm in for Brian. Normally, I'm here from noon until 3. And thank you to J.D. Hayworth. We shift the deck chairs around. No, not on the Titanic, but you know what I'm saying. We shift the deck chairs around a little bit in the absence of Mr. Wilson. I slide over into the afternoon time, and thank you to J.D. Hayworth for sliding in for me and giving you 3 hours of radio excellence. So, Brian, what was it, about a month ago or so? I think that's about right.
Yes.
Weber? Yeah, about a month ago. He announced that he was going through a bout of the shingles, and had gotten through it, had to take a couple of days off as a result, and everything that I've heard and everything that I've seen. My grandmother went through it. My mother went through it, God rest her soul, and it just looks and sounds awful. Everyone that discusses having the shingles or being around someone with them just relates that it's a lot of pain, it's a lot of discomfort, you move the wrong way, whatnot. And so Brian mentioned that he had to take a couple of days off due to the shingles, and sadly the shingles have been there throughout this entire time, but he had kind of a resurgence of them over the last couple of days. So he's out for a couple of days, hopefully back. Monday is a company holiday, so he's got that extra day to recuperate, and then hopefully back on Tuesday afternoon. I'll be back with you on Tuesday afternoon starting at 12 noon and leading up to The Drive with Brian Wilson. Until then, we'll have a good time this afternoon. I'd love to hear from you, 615-737-9986. I love opening up the phone lines, especially on the First Amendment Freestyle Friday. We would enjoy your commentary on the issues that I throw out for the masses. You can also super text us at 615-737-9986. Exact same number. And join in on the chat. There's the F&M Bank chat line right there on Talk TV. You don't have to do anything. You watch it on Talk TV. You're looking at my ugly mug, yippity yippity. Maybe Chris Weber and This is the first time I've been with you since you cut the hair.
And we're going to talk about this?
Yes,
again?
I'm a big fan.
Oh, I appreciate it.
You're a lean guy. Don't get me wrong when I say this. You did not look fat with the longer hair. I just think your face looks leaner with the shorter hair. I think it's a great look for you.
You should see the shape of my face a little more, I guess.
Yeah,
my strong jaw.
You're looking great right now, and I guarantee you at some point on the F&M Bank chat line, someone will comment on that. The longer you stay there you're on the camera right now, right?
Yeah,
right?
Let's turn that off.
Well, see, for me, and I heard you talking to Brian about it, it's like, well, you had short hair for most of your time on radio.
Yeah, very short. Yeah.
And it was just you stopped cutting it for COVID, right?
Yeah. Back when you kind of couldn't get a haircut for a while, they wouldn't let you.
I was right there.
Or they said you got to have a mask on. It's like, how do you get a haircut if you got a mask covering your face and where's the anyway?
Yeah,
so I just said,
I'm
just the hell with it. I'm just not going to get a haircut, and it lasted 3 years.
I feel like you made this decision much in the same way that I make decisions like that. It was like just one day you got up and go, okay, it's time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, it was.
I like it. Well, you look great. Look
Thank
great
you.
on Talk
Thank
TV. Mac Morey looks great on Talk TV. Me, not so much, but I got a fancy shirt. I got a Western shirt on in anticipation of a conversation that we're having at about 3:35 this afternoon, and that is with my good friend Taylor Hicks. If you don't remember or know of Taylor Hicks, well, he has a new single out today. It's dropping today. I'll talk more about that with him at 3:35 this afternoon. But Taylor recently put out his first new single in 14 years. It was called Porch Swing. Good tune. I knew Taylor because he came from Birmingham, and I was in Birmingham during the time that he came up through the American Idol channel and won the 5th season of American Idol. I became good friends with him then, and now he's living in Nashville. I'm living in Nashville, and tonight, I'm excited about this. Tonight is his first appearance on the Grand Ole Opry stage. He will be appearing this evening at the Grand Ole Opry, so if you're going, you will hear him, and he's going to stop by via phone. He was unable to swing into the studio because there's a lot going on, but I'm happy that he's going to be with us. I wonder if a guy like Taylor Hicks, he's been an international star. He's the winner of American Idol. He had a Vegas residency. I wonder if he still gets nervous. First time on the Grand Ole Opry stage? Come on.
Oh, yeah.
You got to feel some butterflies for that, right?
For sure.
That's a big deal. When you stand in that circle of wood, where that's Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings and Roy Acuff. I could go on and on. Oh man,
I think you have to get nervous for that.
Yeah, you're not living if you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not living. And now he might not admit it, but he'll admit it. He'll admit it. 3:35 today. A good friend of mine, Jay Sinclair, will be around at 4:00 to give us a dissection of where he is on the Trump indictment, but also to talk about student loan forgiveness. There's a back and forth going on between Joe Biden and the law. That's the best way that I can put it. Joe Biden has a lot of challenges. He has the challenge of being able to speak. He has the challenge of knowing which way to go to get off a stage. He has the challenge of sandbags, the sandbag challenge, and he loses most of these. He has a challenge with names. He has a challenge knowing if people are still alive or not. All of these are based on actual things that have happened while he's president of the United States. One of Joe Biden's biggest challenges is with the law. And he wants to forgive student debt against the wishes of Congress and thinks that he has the authority to do it. We'll speak with our legal man. Jay Sinclair is a good friend of mine, graduate of the University of Tennessee, brilliant legal mind. He'll be here around 4:05 this afternoon. Let's see. I continue to run him down. I told you it was a busy show. Aaron Goldbranson will swing by briefly to discuss the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition's open letter to the governor, and now they have a response letter that they have sent out based on a meeting that they had with the governor's staff. We'll discuss that with him. And John Harris, a good friend of The Drive, good friend of Brian Wilson's, good friend of Tennessee's with the Tennessee Firearms Association, will swing by at about 5:35 to give us an update on the manifesto front. So that is the loaded show. You in here as you can get in here on our phone line, 615-737-9986. Plus, at 6 o'clock, I am playing a game called Who's Your Daddy? I will explain it at 6 o'clock.
Good, because that needs explanation.
The game is called, it's not like the Maury Povich.
Oh.
Who's Your Daddy?
All right. I was going to say. That could get ugly.
Did you ever watch one of those?
Oh, yeah. You are not the father. And then they start throwing chairs over.
I don't know why. It was, very much like Jerry Springer. It was just why I felt dirty after watching, but I would watch it. And, it was the big buildup, and here's why he couldn't be, and she's slinking around with every guy in town, and you are the father. No!
No. It always made me feel better about my life.
I can't believe I've never seen this.
You've never seen one of those.
I can't believe I've never seen one of these. Yeah, I'm looking it up now. This is crazy.
Maury Povich started off as like just another Jerry Springer, right? He did a lot of different types of shows, but he would do these shows where they would do paternity tests and reveal the paternity test at the end of the show. And it became so popular, it took over the show.
Yeah.
It's all he did.
That's just what it was. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You are not the father.
I told you. I
told you. And you're right. Invariably, there would be chairs thrown or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're not doing that, but we're doing a game of Who's Your Daddy in anticipation of Father's Day. You got big plans for Father's Day? Or do you know?
Do I know? Yeah.
You might not.
Yeah, I am the father, if that's what you're asking.
Well, I'm hoping so, yeah. I am the father.
Yeah, we're going out of town, not for Father's Day. It just happens to coincide with Father's Day, so it should be fun. Hopefully I'll get a celebratory beverage or two.
Yeah, that's nice.
Good.
That's nice. A tie, some Old Spice, some Brute by Fabergé. I'm not a dad, and the dogs are horrible gift givers, so
same.
Any sort of...
they got the gifts that keep on giving, but...
Well, that's true. That's true. I pick them up in the backyard on a regular
exactly. Basis. That's
right. If my wife is listening, though, I hope the dogs have gotten me nothing because the dogs got her nothing for Mother's Day. I finally kind of put the kibosh on it, and I don't think it was received very well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny how that works.
I tried to explain. You're at most a stepmother. At most. But they don't, they're selfish little socialists that live in our house.
Yeah.
What about Mac Moore? You do anything for your dad?
I think we'll probably go out on the boat, hang out.
Oh, that's perfect.
That
It'll be
sounds
great.
nice.
Yeah, Dad
Well,
will like that.
weather permitting, I think Sunday could have some showers, but I think we'll make it work.
Sunday a little iffy.
Yeah.
For all involved. Well, if you're a father, happy Father's Day. God bless you. And listen in at 6:05. We're going to pay a special tribute to you daddies out there with a game called Who's Your Daddy? That's at 6:05 this afternoon. We start with this. The circle is closing a little bit on Joe Biden. We all understand the quote-unquote trouble that Donald Trump finds himself in. He's in a spot of bother. They've been trying to get him since 2015. And now they feel like they finally got him. They finally got him with these indictments. And boy, they're hard-hitting. If you listened to my interview yesterday afternoon with Will Scharf, you know that there are serious flaws in that case. And if you didn't listen to my interview with Will Scharf at about 2:30 yesterday afternoon, never you fear, because we're going to re-rack that at 6:35 tonight for those who missed it. 6 reasons the DOJ's Get Trump document case is seriously flawed. More on that later on. So the media is obsessively giving you every minute detail of this case, and they choose to ignore the very serious allegations against the sitting president of the United States. These allegations, which are now being backed up by audio documentation, which are now being backed up by not one, 2 witnesses to the bribery scheme. If we get this information on record and in public, I don't know how the media can continue to ignore it. But thus far, they've done a hell of a job. Now, if you are continuing to live your life under the mistaken concept that many within the mainstream media try to act fairly as how they report the news and not in a partisan way when it comes to politics, allow me, if you will, this is a favored Brian Wilson phrase, allow me to disabuse you of that notion. I want you to guess collectively, if you're in your automobile, your home, your place of business, you're out and about, wherever you might be, just play along with me. And I want you to shout your answer at the radio. Whatever radio, maybe you're listening on your iPhone, however you're listening, maybe Talk TV, maybe YouTube or Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. I want you to shout your answer collectively to the radio when I ask you this question. Outside of Fox News and Newsmax, I want you to tell me, of all of the rest of the television platforms nationally that present the news, I mean, #NeverCNN, MSNBC, CNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, all of these major networks, out, and I'm just going to do it on the television side because there are obviously notable exceptions in, quote, print journalism, because print journalism isn't really print journalism. It's internet journalism now, but whatever. Outside of Fox and Newsmax, I want you to guess. I'm going to count it down, 3, 2, 1, and then you yell it at your radio, okay? How many minutes of coverage has the rest of the media given to the Joe Biden bribery scandal? Ready? 3, 2, 1. Shout! You're all right. 0. I've never seen. I'm not pulling rank because I don't have rank, especially on the drive. I mean, Wilson's been doing this longer than me. I'm not trying to date him, but I'm saying he's been around, man. I've been around for a little bit too. In the 23 years that I've been doing this job, I've never seen anything like this. That the media is willfully choosing to ignore a scandal that could be the biggest political scandal in American history. I'm not overstating the case. And if you think I am, I invite you to tell me how. 615-737-9986. You disagree with me, I won't say a word, okay? You tell me how this isn't the biggest political scandal in the history of the United States, if true. The Vice President of the United States of America, when he is Joe Biden, is being accused of taking millions of dollars from multiple foreign countries in a scheme to pay off himself and his family members. We are now up to at least 3 countries and $30 million, countries to include Ukraine and China. Now there is a suggestion that he had a deal going with, wait for it, Russia. Now, I understand the obsession of the mainstream media against Donald Trump, but that does not excuse what is journalistic malpractice. That you can't make a mention of this going on? You're not journalists. You're not journalists. In the meantime, Joe Biden's being asked by a couple of publications certain questions. We'll get into that in just a moment. Take your telephone calls as well, and a bevy of guests that we just ran down for you. It's Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson on The Drive. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Democrats trying to force an assault weapon ban, CDC director leaving at the end of the month, and a Tennessee teenager with past hard trips to throw the first pitch at the Nashville Sounds game tomorrow. Those stories and more coming up 30 minutes after the hour of 3 o'clock. I'm Mac Morey on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Morey. Don't go anywhere. I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN, The Drive. No Brian Wilson today. Brian, just a resurgent bout of the shingles, but he's on the mend, and he'll be back. Certainly, we hope by Tuesday. Monday being a company holiday. Mac, this question coming in from the Super Text line, and you can always Super Text us, 615-737-9986. And I had a lot of answers to the question. Most of you were correct. One person said 1,800, and I know exactly who you are and why you said it. That's pretty good.
That's great.
That's Bell's answer during every Mac attack that we have.
I love it.
But this person, 0397, writes in and says, do we get a Mac attack today, or has he suddenly started coughing so as to excuse himself to the facilities? I think this person is accusing you of potentially getting the Bana flu.
Oh, the Bana flu. No, sadly, I did not get the Bana flu this year, but I was, I got vaccinated, sadly, with poorness, with poverty. Yeah. So
got vaccinated with an empty wallet.
Yeah, exactly. So no, sadly not this time.
Okay, if I could make it happen, if I could make it happen, would you and Weber go with me? Not this time. I'm talking like next year.
Absolutely. Are we?
I don't know. What am I asking? Why am I asking? Even it came out of my mouth and I threw up a little. I don't know why I would even say that. Would you go, Maury?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Maury would go.
Yeah.
Are you done with it?
I'll say this. I would go if I could snap my fingers and immediately remove myself at any given time. But I mean, it's too big of a deal. Once you're there, you're kind of like, well, I'm here. I got to stay.
I don't think it's too much of an outlandish statement. It's not like I'm the first guy to think of this, but man, I would be such a good rich person. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
Because I would go to something like that if I was rich enough to be able to kind of, or famous enough, not literally helicopter in, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
you have 100%. The guy and you call him up, hey, I'm ready to go, bring him the car around.
Right, and then you cruise on in and you got your private thing going on and you can get out with the folks if you want.
With just your people, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
I would do well with that.
But I met a guy at an airport a couple of weeks ago, and he said he's been every year for like a dozen straight years, and he recommends camping the whole time. And he says the way they built it up in the past dozen years, if you forget something, they have it there. There's going to be nothing that you won't need there. Everything's going to be right there for your disposal. It's really... The weather's the only thing that would make it rough.
So that's the smart play, is to commit to the 3-day festival and just go in knowing you're going to stay there on site for the entire time.
Yep.
See, I disagree, though, with the weather being the issue. It's the people. It's all the other people. That's the issie.
That's fair.
I mean,
no, the
no
people,
offense, folks.
No, the people are what I would go for, and they're the reason that I would hate it.
Yep.
I mean, the people watching would be the best part of the event, and the people watching would also be the worst part of the event. I mean, I can watch the music anywhere, but the amount. I mean, I saw some of the photos out there, and they're getting into Burning Man territory out there. Bonnaroo, they're going out. They're going all out, wearing little. Well, I can't even talk about what they're wearing. On the red, the FCC will not allow me to talk about what these people look like at Bonnaroo. You know who you are. It's 3:31 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A visit with Taylor Hicks coming up next, right after the news on Super Talk.
It's 3:31. I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 91 degrees, and we've got a chance of some storms here later tonight, but it's not super likely. We do have a higher chance of storms Sunday, and again, it's going to be a hot weekend. Traffic and weather coming up. Democrats in the House are using Gun Violence Awareness Month to try to push Republicans into enacting an assault weapons ban. Today, House leadership was in San Francisco talking guns, as we hear from Alex Stone in California.
Even though there is some disagreement within their own party, Democrats are trying to push a vote on an assault weapons ban. On Friday, Democrats, including former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, were in San Francisco calling out congressional Republicans, accusing them of supporting gun makers because of jumbo contributions made to campaigns and causes.
It's billions of dollars corrupting the system.
In recent days, a bipartisan group of lawmakers introduced a bill that would ban the sale of devices that allow semi-automatic weapons to fire like fully automatic guns.
And in the nation's capital, with the CDC director on her way out at the end of the month, the White House announced her replacement. Brian Clark, details.
The outgoing CDC director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, said Dr. Mandy Cohen is perfectly suited to lead CDC. After the White House announced President Biden will appoint Dr. Cohen as the 20th CDC director. White House spokesperson Olivia Dalton.
Dr. Cohen is one of the nation's top physicians and health leaders with experience leading large and complex organizations and a proven track record protecting Americans' health and safety.
Trained as an internal medicine physician, Dr. Cohen has worked in policy and in government. She served as North Carolina's health secretary.
And back here in Nashville, Fox 17 says that Janae Edmondson, the teenager who was hit by a car and had to have her legs amputated, will be throwing out the first pitch at the Nashville Sounds game tomorrow. The incident happened in St. Louis. She was there for a volleyball tournament. Janae's dad said she will soon be getting prosthetics. And that's the latest news. Weather and traffic next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Wow. First time I've heard this. That's giving me chills. That is a brand new single by the man Taylor Hicks. It is called Teach Me to Dance. It drops today, and I'm going to have to go listen to that thing. Maybe you'll hear it tonight. I don't know. Taylor Hicks joins us on The Drive with no Brian Wilson, Matt Murphy in for Brian, 3:39 this afternoon. What is going on, Taylor?
Matt, get well, Brian, but how are you, Matt?
I'm doing great, brother. Man, I have not had a chance to listen to that, and I heard 20 seconds of it. It gave me a little chill bump. That's pretty good, man.
Well, it was a song by Victoria Shaw, and she wrote it about 25 years ago, and Garth Brooks just fell all over it, loved it to death, and never cut it. And Victoria and I, who's obviously a legendary writer here in town, she had it was like a light bulb went off. She went downstairs and started rummaging around and grabbed a CD and said, "Hey, listen to this. Garth wanted to cut it, but never did for the record label." So here we are. I just fell in love with it. Great wedding song. The timing's good for Father's Day, and I'm just thrilled about it.
Well, I'll ask you in just a moment how people can find it, but I know the album's dropping later on this year. You've already had Porch Swing out, which is just a great song, great tune. How's the reception been for it? Good?
It's been great. I haven't released music in about 14 years, and it's kind of the country soul thing. I've been blessed to have Chris Stapleton, do some recorded it at Zach Brown's studio and here in Nashville, and the country soul thing is kind of hot right now, and I'm definitely not too far from that as far as an artist goes.
No, it's right in your wheelhouse. I don't think I had someone ask me this question earlier today after we talked and I mentioned that you would be on the show, and they said, "Whoa, Taylor's kind of gravitating toward country." I think country's kind of gravitating toward you. I mean, honestly, I think that's just kind of the wheelhouse that we're in right now. The Stapletons of the world and the Zach Browns of the world. I mean, you're fitting right in there. And what is hard for me to believe, Taylor, as long as we've known each other, as much success as you've had the Las Vegas deal going on, you've toured on Broadway, you've obviously American Idol winner, all the things that have come your way. I'm surprised you've never played the Opry.
Never have. I never got in. Luckily, I have the opportunity to debut tonight at the Opry with Jamie Johnson and Vince Gill, who I've been able to play with a few times. Jamie's a buddy, and being in and out of Nashville since I was 23 years old, I would go over to Opryland when I had bad allergies and sit in the atrium, because in Nashville allergies get really hectic in the spring, and if word to the wise, if you have bad allergies, you can always go sit in the atrium and be around the plants and stuff and not get allergies. So I always dreamed about going over and playing the Opry, and tonight's the night, and my number's called. So the phone rang, and I'm answering it.
Was it by design that the single drops and it's the night of the Opry, or was that happenstance?
Well, I'm going on 20 years in show business. I would tell you that the timing, we planned it, but it made sense to be able to drop a song like this, which is a great, in my opinion, just a really great wedding song and a really soulful kind of country ballad, and also to be able to debut on the Opry is a dream come true, and obviously as a Nashvilleian, it's something that these artists around here, they gravitate to get the chance to do it. So the phone rang and I'm answering it tonight.
So I would tell people to go get tickets, but I'm expecting that it's a sold out show because that's the way that Opry goes. But I mean, maybe you get over there and see the show. But I have to ask, and we were kind of wondering this earlier before you came on, Taylor. So, obviously, you won American Idol. You had millions upon millions of eyeballs on you. You've played to sold-out stadiums. But is this different? I mean, you've got to get butterflies, right, for this?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a brand-new venue for me. I have never actually been to the Grand Ole Opry before, and this will be my first time to actually go to the Grand Ole Opry. Which is something that's, is a blessing in itself. And, I'm definitely thanking the man upstairs for giving me the opportunity for that. And first time. So I'm a new venue, especially being around all of the artists that are going to perform tonight, Jeannie Seeley and Vince and Jamie Johnson and Mr. McCoy, who's my favorite harmonica player on the planet. That's just something that you dream about. So I'm blessed. I'm excited to go perform. Hopefully, hopefully there won't be too many bad notes. I'll get asked back.
Oh no, man! There's no doubt you're going to rock it. I mean, absolutely rock it tonight. And it feels like you were made to be a part of that lineup, right? Especially with the harmonica. I mean, Jamie, you guys are kind of seem to be two peas in a pod. Have you known Jamie for a while?
I have, yeah. I've known Jamie for a good while, and I think one of my favorite singers and songwriters in music business. So I just I'm blessed. I'm looking forward to it, and it's going to be a heck of a night, and looking forward to obviously going on tour this fall with the new record. So it's a blessing, and I'm excited to do the opera tonight.
Is that the way that the industry, and forgive me for the ignorance of this question, but it just occurs to me, is this kind of the new way of doing it? You drop a couple of singles from the album before you drop the total album. Is that kind of the way that it's going now?
That's kind of the way that, obviously with social media, streaming, downloads, right. You want to keep the interest up. So I think, for me, it's smart to kind of tease the record with a couple of singles. They might be another single in the pipeline, but I just the music's too good. It's been too long, so I think the record obviously will have some songs on it. But yeah, as far as the way that music is released these days, this is definitely the way that it's the direction that it's headed.
I mean, how does it work? I mean, you're in a lineup of absolute superstars. Do you know where you're going to be in the order? Are you allowed to talk about that? I don't even know if you can talk about that, but are you allowed to? Yeah, I think I'm going to go. I'll be before Jamie. I don't know what the lineup is before. I think Jeannie Seeley's starting the show. I think I'll probably be before Jamie, and then I think Jamie will play, and then Vince will close out the night. But what an amazing place for music. And I like to say, the Opry is kind of like the musical river that's the undercurrent of music, the musical river for this town. And it's just to be able to have a place to go over and see music like that night in, night out is it's a testament to just how strong the Opry's been over time, but just how strong Nashville is as far as tourism, and it really is amazing what all the Opry's done for the city of Nashville and moving forward. I mean, you did the Vegas residency. It's kind of like a different version of that, right? With the different artists that can come in, and you've always got a new crowd night in and night out. It's that kind of I would think, a different vibe, but kind of the same thing.
It definitely has a residency feel. That's kind of, if you're in town, and you play the Opry, more than likely, if someone needs a harmonica on a track, on a song or a live performance, you get the call. So to be able to have the debut and kind of stick my toe in the water over there, it's a dream come true.
I have been told, I don't know because I've never been, obviously, and you say it's your first night, but some of the best jam sessions that have ever been have happened backstage at the Grand Ole Opry. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, they do every night, and I'm about 45 minutes from going and diving headfirst in a big old jam session backstage.
Well, dude, when you told me that you were dropping the single and you were getting out of the Opry, I'm so glad you were able to make a little bit of time to be on the air with us on the drive on Super Talk. You know how much I love you, and you are successful in every venture that you get into, and I know that dropping some of these new singles is going to remind people how good you are if they've forgotten, and I know tonight will be a wild success.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt. I love Super Talk for all the right reasons. So you have a great day, and tell Brian to get better.
I will, man, and have a wonderful night tonight, and we'll be watching you. Take care. There's Taylor Hicks joining us for a few moments. Teach Me to Dance is the new single. Wrote it for Garth.
It's pretty big, yeah.
Yeah. Let that roll for a minute, yeah? A little fiddle in there. Oh, yeah, I
Not
like
too
that.
shabby.
That's pretty good. There he is, Taylor Hicks at the Grand Ole Opry tonight. So if you're going out, you'll see Taylor along with Jamie Johnson, Jeannie Seeley. Man, Jeannie Seeley, what an institution in this town. The wife and I listen to Jeannie's Sirius XM show on the weekends. I mean, that woman has more.
I don't think you're supposed to say that.
Am I not supposed to say that? Well, between I listen to Paul Winkler, of course, and Jeff Eddy's on the radio on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I didn't know you could backpedal that quickly.
Let me just cover all this up there, Weber. But anyway, great to have Taylor on with us, and best of luck to him tonight as he steps out. That's pretty cool that the first time that you walk into the Grand Ole Opry House.
Yeah, that's big.
You're going on
the
stage.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Have you been?
I have been. Yeah, it's very cool. Just to see a live radio broadcast happen in front of you. It's just awesome. I mean,
I've done the Opry.
I guess I kind of get to see a live radio broadcast happen here every day too, but not quite the same.
Just to be able to witness a radio broadcast. You never get to see that.
Never get to see that.
I didn't catch that when you first said it.
After I said it, I heard myself.
But I know what you mean. I mean, there's now that Garrison Keillor Prairie Home Companion is done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is it, right? Where you see everything that happens on the radio is happening on stage in front of a live audience, and you don't get that much anymore.
Nope.
It used to be the way things were done. I've been to the Ryman on a couple of occasions when the Opry moved to the Ryman. We went when we came to visit years ago. I guess it was 2012. We went and saw Dierks Bentley was there. I think Jeannie Seeley was there that night as well. Whispering Bill Anderson might have been there. But that's at the Ryman, and I'm told that it's a much different feel out at the Opry House.
Oh yeah, much bigger venue, newer, obviously, different feel. But I mean, it's
comfier seats.
Oh yeah, much comfier.
It'd be hard to go the other way on the seating.
It's not concrete block on the floor. Well, it'd be about all you could do to make it worse.
The Ryman, you know that it's not comfy seating when they say, well, you have to understand the history of these pews,
right. Yeah.
The history. I was like, well, yeah, the history of these pews is they were, made out of brick or something. I don't know. Well, I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to put him on the spot. So this is the reality of what happened. I got to do it quick. So Taylor calls me and lets me know, and he didn't want to be on the show. He wanted to know, if I knew that the song was dropping. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I said, you need to come on the show. And he goes, okay. He goes, hey, you want to come to the show? And I don't know if he meant it or not. And so I hit him up and I said, if you got tickets. And so he hasn't answered me yet.
Yeah. He's probably trying to figure out how to put you on the list.
Man, I hope so.
It's his first time, so you got to
figure that out.
Yeah.
I hope I can get on the list. That'd be
cool,
nice to be on the list. I can remind Jamie Johnson that I beat him in Montgomery in a golf match down at Montgomery. Probably didn't remember that.
I doubt it.
Jamie Johnson looks like a crazy person on the golf course, by the way. Beard and overalls. Anyway, it's 53. I'm not making that up. 53 after the hour on Super Talk.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA, which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here in here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you into higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
4 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. A scorching weekend ahead, but some rain will help cool you off on Sunday, which is Father's Day. 91 degrees right now. Complete weather and traffic in just a few minutes. A jury in Pittsburgh today found Robert Bowers guilty of opening fire at the Tree of Life Synagogue in October of 2018, killing 11 worshipers and injuring 7 more in the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. Pierre Thomas says the verdict was a priority for federal prosecutors, even though lawyers for Bowers admitted that he was responsible.
They were deeply concerned about the fact that this was, in fact, a hate crime, that this suspect went to that synagogue to kill people based on their religion, full stop. And it was a high priority case to get the conviction. Now he's eligible for the death penalty. So in terms of the message that it sends, that's why this was a priority for the federal government to get in there, get this conviction, and make this man an example for the heinous crime that was committed.
In Marion County, Tennessee, the TBI is investigating after police responded to a house to find 6 people dead last night. 3 children, 3 adults were inside of the burning home, with a 7th person found and had been shot but was still alive. TBI believes the person responsible for this is one of the 6 that are dead. A tornado ripping through the small Texas town of Perryton late last night. ABC's Maria Varela is on the ground in northern Texas and tells us even for those residents not among the 200 whose homes were destroyed, it's going to be a very long road back to normal.
This entire town is without power for now. Their concern was whether or not several of their facilities that generate a lot of power for this area, whether they had been damaged as well. So they're going to be assessing that later on today. But we have heard from residents that this could take days, if not weeks, for them to get things back up and running. Really, the first priority for a lot of these families here is just trying to assess the damage, clean things up, and figure out what their next steps are.
And in sports, their union representing NBA players is critical of the league levying one of the harshest penalties in its history, and it involves a player in Memphis, Tennessee. Brian Clark.
Announcing a 25-game suspension for Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant, the NBA also stipulated he meet conditions before being allowed to return. That's one item the NBA Players Union has criticized in a statement in which it called the suspension excessive and inappropriate, saying Morant has expressed remorse and accepted responsibility. Morant is considered one of the NBA's best young players. The suspension stems from a live stream video in which he can be seen holding a gun in a car 2 months after he was suspended 8 games for live streaming himself holding a gun in a Colorado strip club.
And that is the latest news, traffic, and weather next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
It is indeed the drive. No Brian Wilson today. Matt Murphy in for the ailing Brian Wilson. He is on the mend. We have it on good authority because I heard the voice of Brian Wilson saying that he was on the mend moments ago during that brief time out for news and other commercial advertisements. So he should be back this coming Tuesday, as Monday is a company holiday. 408 Supertalk 99.7 WTN. In his absence, Matt Murphy in with you until 7 o'clock. Normally you hear me from noon until 3, and I'm pleased to be able to jump into the Wilson chair and get you home in the proper fashion, as Brian likes to say. We'll make the drive home a little easier, make you a little smarter, and hopefully drive some leftists crazy. I know that this guy has a good way of doing that, our next guest. We're going to introduce him in just a moment. If you missed any of the first hour, Taylor Hicks was with us. He's making his Opry debut tonight on the stage at the Grand Ole Opry House later on. So if you're going, you'll see Taylor and Jamie Johnson and Vince Gill and a number of other acts. That should be an exciting time. I think the wife and I are going. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost confident.
So you're saying, and you may see Matt Murphy.
Maybe. I'll be somewhere in the back. I mean, not
next
backstage.
to the trash
either.
cans, right?
I am told that if you are able, the best place to get is backstage. I mean, and obviously not everybody can go back there. But if you have an in with one of the artists, and it was actually Pamela Furr that told me this. She said that you just sit back there and listen for the room that they're in, and then kind of gravitate to that room, because these artists, they love music so much and they don't get together all that often. And there's always different people that are together. And so you'll have, Marty Stewart and Vince Gill jamming with, Jamie Johnson or Dierks Bentley or whoever it might be. I mean, they just get backstage and jam when they're not on stage, when they're waiting to go on.
That sounds like the real show.
It does. It does. I love that shot of the, just the history of the show itself. There's an old shot that I saved of the old gates. Now, obviously, this predates the Opry House, where it is now, just off of the Opry Mills Mall and all of that. But it's the stairway leading down to the gates that lead to the alley between the Ryman Auditorium and like Tootsie's and some of the bars.
Yeah.
Just to imagine the number of just superstars that have walked through those gates is pretty cool. Speaking of superstars, he's a superstar in the legal profession. He joins me on a weekly basis, and he is worth every dime that I pay him to do so. His name is Jay Sinclair, and he's with us on the drive this afternoon to talk about a variety of things, maybe even the Grand Ole Opry. Hey, Jay, how are you?
Man, if I was any better, I'd be your dog, Mrs. Beast.
The only thing that would make her life better, Jay,
is if she caught one of those names.
That's exactly, you know me so well. That's exactly right. She is on the hunt, man. We have a new addition to the menagerie, and that is a bunny rabbit that my wife is now feeding in the front yard. A wild rabbit. And
yeah, well, that wouldn't last long in my yard.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. If Beasley could go through glass, it would not last long in our yard either, because it's funny because the thing hangs out in the front yard near a tree, and she's learned where it hangs out. And and so now she will occasionally go over to the window and like use her head to kick the curtains back. And she'll eyeball, and she'll stand there for a minute, and then she'll walk off. She's looking for that, when the bunny rabbit's there, she goes nuts.
Oh yeah, so she's vocal about it.
Oh yes, but she knows where it is, and she occasionally, every 30 minutes or so, she goes over there and sees if it came back. Well, we'll see how all that. I think that's going to turn out in a bloody fashion.
Yeah. I would not get emotionally attached. Don't name the rabbit.
Oh, Jay.
Don't name the rabbit.
She already named it.
Uh-oh.
I know. Well, she had rabbits when she was younger. Yeah. She had a pet bunny rabbit. And now she's named this wild rabbit Rick the rabbit. And I just don't know that Rick's going to make it very long in a neighborhood full of dogs. But Jay, before we go anywhere else, I want to thank you. And for those listening on the drive that have not heard this conversation, maybe you missed it, you were at work or whatnot, I'm going to replay this. This is how good the conversation was at 6:35, and it was with Will Scharf, who's an attorney general candidate in the state of Missouri. He is He's a longtime attorney, criminal guy, and let me tell you, he was sharp. And you turned me on to this. You're so in tune with these types of things. You said, hey, you need to read this, Matt. And I got him on the show, and he was fabulous.
No, absolutely. And when I was reading it, he posted something on Twitter, and I like to keep up with a lot of that stuff. And I was reading it, and it was well written and well reasoned, very well reasoned, from an experience. He was an assistant U.S. attorney. I mean, that was his job for many, many years, man. When I read that, I said, this is what man needs to know. I can kind of pretend to know about these things. This guy knows about it.
Well, he was great, and I'm just wondering if there's any additional thoughts that you have on the indictment. I want to talk to you about this loan forgiveness deal in front of the Supreme Court, but from an indictment front, anything new for you?
No, there's no new developments. Again, I thought the one thing that Will said that did make sense to me, we've been talking a lot about timing, right? And that's really kind of the first thing we're going to see from this is it going to be set for trial or not? And his prediction is that Trump would do everything he could to push this back past the election. And I think I probably agree with that, man. But that's more of a political call than a legal call. But there's a lot of things they need to do. And, if you keep a case from getting to a jury, then that's what you need to try to do. That's what I spend my life doing. If you get there, you got to win it. But they can file motions, and motions to have the case thrown out of court, and lots of them, with a lot of good grounds. So I think that's what we're going to be seeing in the next few months, man. I don't think there'll be a trial this year, and I'm not certain there'll be a trial before, at least the primaries. And then if they get that close, I don't think the judge will have a trial next summer. So I think this is still going to be pending, certainly when the primaries happen. And then if he's the nominee, I think it'll still be pending when the general election happens.
You can read some of the points made by Scharf online, and I think the Federalist posted what was largely a Twitter post that he made on the 6 separate points. And I just feel like, I mean, you feel like these are good arguments to present before a judge, at least some of them, in order to get part of this thrown out. I mean,
exactly.
That's the first thing, right?
Right.
So the best case scenario for Trump, let's just live in this world, is that the judge agrees and throws out a lot of the meat of the prosecution's case to the point that they can't even bring one.
Yeah, or I mean, I think Will was kind of suggesting this. They might throw out the Espionage Act piece of it. That's that's 31 counts, but that's not where he's got the biggest problem, I think. It's more this process stuff.
Right.
Not complying with the subpoena, obstruction of justice, and those things. Frankly, I think that's where he's got the larger legal hurdles to climb. But they got some stuff to say there, too, that they forced an attorney to breach the attorney-client privilege. And, they got a lot of legal arguments to make about that. And it's incredible that this prosecutor, this is just incredible. And I don't believe the guy would lie about this. Told the lawyer that, if you the other defendant, right, kind of his staff guy.
Walt, whatever his name is. Walt Nauta is his name.
Is his baller. Ex-military guy, which I love. But he told this guy's lawyer he's trying to get to be a judge somewhere in Washington, D.C. And he said, if your guy pleads guilty here, that could go a lot better for you.
I mean,
that's incredible, man.
I mean, would you
Department of Justice
is essentially holding a potential judgeship, if these accusations are accurate, over this guy's head, encouraging him to encourage his client to plead a certain way.
Yeah, it's called extortion. That's called extortion.
Oh, I mean, the next thing he's going to offer him $5 million bribe to do the thing. I mean, I hear that these $5 million bribes are running around pretty rampant in Washington, D.C. now.
Yeah, and the paper trail on that is incredible, man. And I guess so much of it comes from hiding Hunter's or son's laptop. But they have where they set up the account. they have where the money got deposited.
Yes.
And I read this. I don't know if it's true or not, but they reported it on their 2017 income tax.
Yeah. $10 million.
I mean,
Hey, you got to pay your taxes, Jay. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah. Well, there won't be Al Capone. Right?
Well, set aside the politics of this. You and I know each other a long time, and I know your boy Chuck, and he's a good man. But but think about this. I mean, put yourself in this position. It's hard to do because a lot of shady crap's going on. But like you're working the system. Everybody's making money. Everybody's in the clear. No worries about it. And then you get a call that Chuck left his laptop at some stupid computer repair store, and they turned it over to the FBI.
That would be like asking him to paint the support poles in my garage. And he paints 90% of them, man, and stops when he gets 6 inches away from both the floor and the ceiling.
Well, he didn't want to get any paint on the ceiling, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick time out. I'm curious about this student loan forgiveness case. It's before the United States Supreme Court. Jay's with us, and let me see if I can figure that. Oh, there. Well, hold on, that didn't work. Mine doesn't work in here. My little hold button doesn't work. I'll have to ask you to do it. That worked. Yeah. That's what I got Chris Webber for. Jay will be back with us. In case you missed it, Joe Biden wants to forgive all of this student debt, and he did it as a political maneuver, and the Supreme Court is about to weigh in on all this. We'll let Jay Sinclair weigh in on it in just a moment. It's 4:19. This is The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the way to China. Some suburb safety data now here in the U.S. And Brentwood and Franklin, we'll find out where they rank. And then some money news. That and more coming up 4:30. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Mm-hmm. Bonaflu. That's what that was.
That's it.
That was the Bonaflu.
Thinking about the Foo Fighters.
On 6:30. No, wait. 4:30.
Dang it.
It's coming. It's coming. I'm ready for it, too. Weekend is just about upon us. It's 4:30. Now, see, I'm doing it. It's 4:23. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. My man Jay Sinclair is with us, breaking down a couple of legal matters to include this story involving student loan forgiveness. And I want to back up and make sure that everybody's caught up on this, Jay, because this is something that the Democrats, over the years kind of regularly said, well, the president can't do this. He has to have Congress. I think it was Nancy Pelosi when she was Speaker of the House said, well, no, the president can't do this on their own. Congress has to do this. And the president's trying to do it on his own, right?
Right. Yeah, man, we've been talking about this for years. I think you talked with Gary Palmer about it too. It's one of my pet peeves. Over the decades, Congress has ceded much of its authority to the executive branch. So much so that we almost now have a fourth branch of government, Matt. That's the administrative branch. All these departments and bureaus and so forth. And they make law, man. They just make law. And that's not right. I just think so much of that's unconstitutional. And that's, the court's beginning to look at that. This is the most egregious example of this that I've seen. Many years ago, Congress passes a law to create federally funded student loans. Fine. Then after 9/11, they passed a law, I think it's called the HEROES Act. And its purpose was to give some relief to soldiers, who went into active duty for a couple of years in the war of Iraq and Afghanistan. So they passed a law and gave the Department of Education, I believe, the discretion to make accommodations for people like servicemen. If you're in the war in Iraq, your loans are on hold for the period of your service.
Mm-hmm.
That was his intent. We're not going to make you pay student loans while you're fighting a war. So then we fast forward to the last few years, and this student loan forgiveness thing has been rolling around. And yeah, everybody agreed. Well, that's for Congress, right? It involves money. The Constitution grants the power of the purse to Congress. And then Biden comes along and says, hey, you know what? We've been looking at this law again. And actually, we think Congress gave us more power than we were thinking. It wasn't just to hold loans in abeyance while soldiers are defending liberty. We can actually forgive the loans completely, even if it costs $500 billion. And so that's what they did. They got challenged in court. But here's the plot twist, man. While all this is going on, the Republicans propose in Congress a law, in effect clarifying that law from back after 9/11 that says, no, you cannot forgive loans. We didn't mean that back then. Now we're saying it in a very clear voice. You cannot do that. If we never meant to give that power to the executive branch, but if we did, we're taking it back. Right? Makes perfect sense. And it was bipartisan, man. Right? The Democrats control the Senate. This passed both the House and the Senate. Both the House and the Senate said to the president, no, if we don't believe we gave you this power, but if we did, we're taking it back. Right? Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Biden vetoes the law, man. And says, I don't care what Congress cares about this. Y'all screwed up back in 2002 when you gave us the power to do it, and we're going to do it. And even though you're now saying that you don't want us to do that, well, it's too late. And to stop me from doing it, you now must have 2/3, right? To override the veto, you got to have 2/3. And it's the clearest example yet, man, of a situation. You know, when the cases, the Supreme Court's already looking at this issue. And one of the things they look at when the executive branch does some really big, dramatic thing, it's called the big questions doctrine, is, well, what's happened on the political side? Has Congress looked at this issue and have they been able to pass legislation? Well, to date, man, the most they've been able to say is, no, you know what? Congress has looked at this. They considered this law. They didn't pass it. And so we're not going to let the executive do it if it can't get through Congress. Mm-hmm. Well, this is a step beyond that, man. Here is the Congress saying to the president, no, you cannot do that.
So,
and he's saying, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway.
When the courts, in the midst of considering this, they'll look at that. I mean, will they not look at the fact?
Absolutely.
They'll look at it and say, well, Congress just clarified their intent when the initial thing was passed. And the fact that you vetoed it in no way changes the fact that the body of Congress told you, hey, hold on a second, bud. This is what we meant when we passed the thing.
No question. In fact, I think that will be ruled unconstitutional, the student loan forgiveness debt. That's what I predict. You know me, I rarely predict outcomes of cases. But that's what I believe is going to happen. And I think very early on in the opinion, they will say, well, my word, Congress just passed a law saying, no, we're not going to spend this $500 billion. And they have under the Constitution, they have the power of the purse. And in light of that, we are not going to let the president do that over the objection of Congress. It's just the most extreme case of it, and there's been a lot of pretty extreme cases.
I'm trying to think of an analogy that would work. I mean, it would be. I think it's better put just in the context of the way that you said it. That the president decided to very loosely, his administration very loosely and liberally interpreted something that Congress did, and said, well, you know, this is what we think they meant. And Congress comes back and says, no, we didn't mean that. We meant and then basically the president says, no, you didn't.
That's too late.
No, you didn't. You didn't mean it. You meant it the first way. No, you didn't mean it that way.
You can't change your mind. And here's the thing: he's basically saying you can't change your mind. Well, we're the Congress. We're a co-equal branch of government. That would be like if Congress in January cut taxes by 10%. And then in June, you know, something's happened, the economy's changed or whatever. And then they pass a law undoing that.
Uh-huh.
Say, no, I'm sorry, we didn't do it. They'd be like the president saying, yep, can't do it.
So if there was a question about which way this would go, you feel like that question is closed in your feeling on the matter?
Well, I guess what I'd say is this. This is, you know, in the law, we would call this a very material development. You know, I'm not going to say this alone changes the outcome of the case, man, but it's big. And to me, it just really shines a spotlight on how out of control this whole process has become.
Well, you're right, because Congress, their laziness in not getting into the meat of the law leads to all of this. Jay, hate to do it, but we've got to leave it there. You know how much I enjoy your analysis. Hit them straight this weekend, and I'll talk to you again next week.
Look forward to it, buddy.
Take care. There's Jay Sinclair, good friend of the show, giving his analysis on student loan forgiveness, feeling that the court is going to strike this down. And Joe Biden will get yet another rebuke during his presidency. It's 4:32 on Super Talk.
Now 4:33, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. A muggy day, 92 degrees, and it's set to be a hot weekend. Sunday, we'll have some showers and possible storms. Full forecast and the latest traffic report on the way. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is finally headed to China. The United States' top diplomat says his visit alone isn't enough to improve ties between the two countries. It could set the stage for an even higher level meeting. Here's more from Shannon Crawford.
After months of delay, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is setting off for what's shaping up to be a contentious trip to China.
To establish open and empowered communications so that our two countries responsibly manage our relationship.
While both Beijing and Washington are setting low expectations for the visit, it could pave the way for more talks, including another face-to-face between President Biden and China's President Xi, potentially as soon as this year.
And a recent study found that Brentwood and Franklin are the safest suburbs in Tennessee. Smart Asset found that the two Middle Tennessee cities are among the top 25 safest suburbs to live in across the country. Brentwood ranked 16th safest. Franklin came in at 21. And the nation's safest suburb, Great Falls, Virginia. And over to the money news.
Wall Street dipped in Friday trading going into the holiday weekend, but still closed ahead for a fifth straight week, reaching its highest level since April of 2022. The Dow and S&P 500 each dropped less than 0.5%. The Nasdaq down 0.7% with a 93-point drop. The Commerce Department today announced $930 million to connect remote communities to the internet. The money will go towards 12,000 miles of new fiber optic cable in 35 states and Puerto Rico. Members of the union representing UPS workers voted to authorize a strike that could happen as early as August. Employees are demanding improved working conditions and benefits. The companies agreed to union demands for air conditioning in all new UPS trucks starting next year. British regulators have cleared the way for Amazon to buy Roomba manufacturer iRobot. The $1.7 billion deal is still waiting for approval in the United States and Europe. Consumer groups have voiced concerns that the purchase would broaden Amazon's dominance of the smart home market.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
20 minutes till 5 o'clock on the drive. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson this afternoon. Glad to be with you until 7 o'clock tonight. We hand off to the great one, Mark Levin, at that time. And then we'll call it a weekend, a Father's Day weekend. Special Father's Day segment coming up at 6:05. I call it Who's Your Daddy? Who's Your Daddy? Be on the lookout for that. Between now and then, Aaron Goldbranson will stop by for a couple of minutes to update us on the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition's call to stop the special session. They met with the governor's folks just a couple of days ago, and he will update us on that. Plus, John Harris of the Tennessee Firearms Association to update us on the manifesto deal. I mean, I don't know how many lawyers are rolling out against this thing, but there's so many different maneuvers that are going on. It could be years before we see a resolution to this case. And how can you make a decision about whatever law you need to pass in the special session without having some of this information? That's coming up as well. Good opportunity for you to get in on the phone lines if you so desire about any subject matter of your choosing. It's the First Amendment Freestyle Friday, after all. 615-737-9986. 737 WWTN. You know, Brian Wilson calls himself your FARB, your friend and radio buddy. I'm your friend and radio troublemaker. So you can figure that out for yourself.
Radio. Oh. Yeah, I see what you did there.
See what I did there, right? In the meantime, speaking of trouble, Joe Biden's in a spot of bother, and Joe Biden seems annoyed that anyone would ask him about this. This happened yesterday, right after a meeting of the minds, and I don't know who all was sitting at the dais, but you know how this scrum goes in Washington, D.C., right? So these guys sit around and they smile for the cameras, and they allow the media in there and they make a couple of comments, and they let the cameras roll. And then when the time comes, the handlers of the Biden administration, okay, time to go, get out of here, time to go, thank you, that's enough. You hear them screaming. You'll hear them in a second because I have audio of it. And at that stage, the battle is on. I call it the gobbledygook because it sounds like a bunch of turkeys gobbling. You know, the media scrum. They're asking questions, and, you know, they're trying to get above the fray to ask their question a little bit louder than the next guy. I bet it was easy for Wilson when he was in that scrum because, you know, he's taller than everyone else, so his voice kind of carries over everybody else's heads. That said, the scrum demanded to know, well, at least one in the scrum was curious enough to ask this question. It's difficult to hear, but I'm going to play the audio for you. It's only about 13 seconds long, and then I will tell you what's going on here. Here's the New York Post asking Joe Biden a question about Ukraine.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Why did the Ukraine FBI informant file refer to you as the big guy? Why is that term really applied? Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Brad. Question.
Okay, so difficult to hear, almost impossible, but I'll translate. The reporter who works for the New York Post wanted to know, why did the Ukraine FBI informant file refer to you as the big guy, President Biden? Why is that term continuously applied? Joe Biden shot back, why do you ask such a dumb question? It may seem like a small thing, but I don't believe that it is. Because here's the deal. Everybody knows that Joe Biden is the big guy. Everybody. You know. I know. Chris Webber knows. McMorey knows. Everybody. The FBI knows. They know that we know. And they know that we know that they know. And they know that we know that they know that we know that they know. Who else would be the big guy? And the big guy's getting kickback after kickback while the big guy was vice president of the United States. And that is, speaking of knowing, a no-no. So we know that they know that we know that they know that he did a no-no. And nobody will talk about it. How embarrassing. I understand these guys going after Trump. I disagree with it. I think it's shameful, but I get it. They have Trump derangement syndrome. For a long time, I didn't believe that really exists, but I do. They are so consumed with the concept of bringing this person down, the person that never was supposed to be. You understand that the vast majority of the media circles in Washington, D.C. and New York City, they never conceived of a time where Donald Trump would be president of the United States of America. And then he became it. The Hillary Clinton camp, the FBI, the ensconced deep state, they never considered that this would happen. So I can understand how it's driven them quite mad. They thought that they had him time and time and time again as president of the United States, and they never could lay glove on him. And it's driven them crazy. How many times have we heard since now they've got him. Oh, this one is the one. Oh, this will bring him down. What did he say to Billy Bush on that bus? Oh, he's never going to survive that. Women will flock away from him. What did he say on that? Over and over and over again, the number of times that they think, now we've got him. Well, this is the closest that they've gotten. And I'm just using empirical evidence. It is as close as they're going to get. An indictment, a 37-count indictment. And now we've got him. And so I get why the media is obsessively reporting on this. But my goodness, CNN has 24 hours in a day. MSNBC has 24 hours in a day. These other media outlets have online platforms where they could easily present other information that's in the news, like a credible accusation against the sitting president of the United States of America that he took bribes while he was vice president. Bribes to the tune of at least 10, but as much as $30 million. They filed it on their tax returns, folks. So I get why they're so obsessed with Trump, but can you imagine, how do you look at, if you're any one of these people from CNN, these slime balls, how do you look at yourself in the mirror? How do you call yourself a reporter if you're the New York Times and you're ignoring this story? Even if you don't think it's true, it's not a matter of them spiking it to the point where they put it on the back pages or spiking it in such a way where they narrate what they want to have happened, not what may have happened. In other words, and they do this all the time, it's all about how you position the story. Instead of saying a credible whistleblower has come forward and accused, they say Republicans attack Joe Biden. You know, it's all about how they position it. They're not even doing that. I'm telling you, in 23 years of doing this, I've never seen anything like it. Where they almost collectively, outside of Fox and Newsmax, and somebody said OAN, and I no disrespect, but they're small potatoes in comparison to the rest of the guys. Outside of Fox and Newsmax, they have seemingly collectively decided that they are going to act as if this story doesn't exist. When there is a paper trail, there is a money trail, there are bank accounts, there are documents that all lead to Joe Biden. This has nothing to do with Hunter. Well, it does have everything to do with Hunter, but it's not about Hunter Biden necessarily. It's about Joe. It's about the big guy. Bill's on the road. Bill, thank you for your call this afternoon. Hope you're doing well, sir.
Hi, thank you, sir. My concern is this. If the Congress calls people up to testify against the president with all the mess he's in, and they don't feel like answering the question, supposedly they're held in contempt of Congress. But Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress, and nothing happened to him. So I guess the people coming up, they think, well, nothing happened to him, so I don't have to worry about it. I'm not going to answer questions. Could you tell me what actually happens, and I'll hang up and listen?
Yeah, sure, Bill. I'll be happy to tell you as much as I can as I break it down. It's my understanding that the Congress has no authority to go further than holding you in contempt outside of what the Department of Justice is willing to do in concert with the Congress. I think it was the Justice Department that went after Steve Bannon after Steve Bannon was held in contempt of Congress and was charged through that statute. So you have to rely, I believe I'm right in this, and I'll fact check myself here in just a second, but I believe it is the case that once you are held in contempt of Congress, it's not like the Capitol Police can go pick you up. Congress doesn't have a jail, so they depend on the Justice Department at that point and the executive branch through the Department of Justice. I guess it wouldn't be the Justice Department. It wouldn't be the court system. It would be the executive branch, the Department of Justice, the feds, the FBI, et cetera, in order to initiate that. And I'm almost certain that I'm correct on that. So when Democrats are in control and Republicans file charges like that, they don't do anything with them. Vice versa, same deal. But when Democrats are in control of both branches, they can do what they did with Steve Bannon, and that is hold him in contempt. And, of course, in the case of Eric Holder, the rules are for thee and not for me. Come on, man. Former Attorney General, I don't have to be held by the same standards as you are held. You're just a common citizen, Bill. Give me a break. 451 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. More in a moment on The Drive.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. Which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here and here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you in a higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
5 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. We've got a hot weekend ahead with some rains and storms possible for Father's Day. Right now, 91 degrees. A complete weather forecast and the latest traffic report coming up 5 minutes. This just in Tennessee, Fox 17 says that nearly 7,000 online forms appealing the latest TCAP scores have been approved, meaning that lots of third graders are not going to face retention. There have been over 9,000 forms representing over 8,000 third grade students. About 7,000 of them were approved. 60% of third graders were at risk of retention because of the TCAP scores, and there are still 2 more weeks to appeal. Over to the war in Ukraine, the NATO chief only speaking of Ukraine in terms of supplying ever-increasing weaponry. Here's Tom Rivers.
Well, more citizens in alliance countries want to see pressure applied on developing a negotiated settlement. Secretary General Stoltenberg isn't going down that track. His take on Ukraine's forces.
They face tough terrain, dug-in Russian troops, and fierce fighting. As Russia's war aggression continues, it remains crucial that we increase our support.
Just the latest U.S. military support package for Kyiv comes with the price tag of over $2 billion.
In Tennessee, an apparent murder-suicide. It happened overnight in Marion County at a home that was set on fire. Channel 4's Brendan Tierney has the latest details.
The TBI says bodies of the 3 adults and 3 children who were killed overnight have been brought here to the medical examiner in Nashville for autopsies. Officers say they were pulled from a burning home in Marion County after police were called about a shooting around 9 last night. It took hours to put the flames out, and at this time, officials say it's not clear how many people were shot because at least 2 died from smoke inhalation.
A 7th person was found and shot, but was still alive. TBI believes the person responsible is one of the 6 people dead. Crime in Tennessee. 2 teenage brothers are now facing charges after a 13-year-old was shot yesterday. This happened at an apartment complex in South Nashville. The teen was shot in his shoulder and is currently at Vanderbilt Medical Center. Officials say right now they believe that a 15-year-old was outside, had a rifle in hand, that then went off and hit the 13-year-old. The teen reportedly fled the scene. The shooter's 16-year-old brother allegedly told the shooter to leave, and then he went and hid that weapon inside. And in sports news, one of the NBA's brightest young stars and one of Tennessee's best-known athletes right now has been suspended for almost 1/3 of next season. Brian Clark.
The NBA has suspended Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant for 25 games without pay due to what the league described as conduct detrimental to the league. This suspension stems from a May incident in which Morant was seen holding a gun as another person was live streaming their car ride. And this came just 2 months after Morant was suspended for 8 games after he live streamed himself holding a gun in a Colorado strip club. The league says the Grizzlies star will also be required to meet certain conditions before he returns to play.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Indeed, it is The Drive. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson just after 5 o'clock, and a good afternoon, 5:07 to be precise. Happy to be with you on this Friday, June 16. Hope you have big weekend plans. Hope you're doing something for the dads in your life. An hour from now, we'll play a game called Who's Your Daddy? That will involve you on the phones. More on that coming up in about an hour from now. As it stands, it is a mess traffic-wise. I just looked at the SmartWays app, and it is absolutely a mess. Jack Womack can tell you the same thing. Just be patient. It'll be there when you get there. That's all I can tell you. We'll try to make that drive or that lack of driving a little more palatable over the next couple of hours right here at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So we've discussed quite a bit on our radio station and on this radio show the ins and outs and the various maneuvering involving the Covenant School manifesto. We will get the latest on that about 30 minutes from now, as we'll be joined by John Harris from the Tennessee Firearms Association. There's some new developments in that situation and brand new lawyers. It seems like every time we talk about this, there's more lawyers on the side of not releasing the so-called manifesto. If this keeps up for much longer, I'm going to start wondering what they're trying to hide. If I didn't know any better, I'd think they were trying to hide something. Well, the lack of release of a manifesto and the fact that that is still in the courts very much has to do with our next subject, and that is the concept of a special session of the Tennessee General Assembly to specifically address, well, that's the trouble because we're not really sure what we're addressing. I felt confident that even after the governor called for a special session to deal with, quote, an order of protection measure, that in the face of the opposition in his own party and in the face of the fact that we have a lawsuit ongoing that will prevent the General Assembly from being able to lay hands on information that they believe is necessary for them to make a decision as to what laws they could pass to potentially prevent something like Covenant School, I would have bet dollars to donuts that the governor would be reconsidering the call of a special session in August, especially considering that in addition to all of that and the general feeling that this will come to no good end, that we now know, thanks to some of the work on the part of the Tennessee Star and other organizations, that there are leftist organizations outside of the state of Tennessee that are planning to come into the state of Tennessee and cause trouble, to attempt to disrupt the legislative session or even rough up some folks outside of the Tennessee state capitol. To speak on this and to speak about their meeting with the governor's office, we welcome back to the show Aaron Gulbranson of the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition. He joins us via the Murphy Show hotline. Aaron, good afternoon. Hope you're well.
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm fabulous. So let's get folks up to date before we talk about new developments. So the information came out about the possibility of a special session, and I kind of set this up a minute ago. And then we got information, and the Tennessee Star, I'll give them credit, did some good work in getting info that there were meetings held in the city of Nashville regarding disrupting the special session that was planned in August. And that's kind of where you take that up. I'm certain that as a person, Aaron, who's in the Capitol quite a bit, and as an organization, the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition, that caused you some concern.
It does. And I do want to emphasize, I saw everything that happened in 2020. I saw everything that happened this year with the bullhorn trio, as you like to call them. There is very real danger. And then, of course, the Tennessee Star, and you reported on it extensively, and I've got to give a shout out to our friend Pamela Burrs, reported on it, Dan Mandis on your station, all that jazz. They are having planning meetings, and we are aware of other planning meetings that are going on that hasn't hit the press yet, that they're continually planning on wreaking havoc during session, committing violence. People are going to bring guns. Ironically, the anti-gun people are planning on bringing guns to a special session. He doesn't whine about it, but I know the House Majority Leader was punched in the kidney by somebody during the waning days of regular session, And he doesn't whine about it, but if you're discounting the idea that there's going to be violence during the session, well, I can already point to you to a specific legislator that was attacked just a few months ago.
So I mean, we have individuals that are telegraphing that they will be here, and they're telegraphing that their intent is to disrupt by any means necessary, and so as an organization, the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition felt the need to speak on this, and you wrote an open letter to the governor. Remind people what that open letter said.
The open letter asked Governor Lee to cancel plans for an August special session of the Tennessee General Assembly, primarily due to the public safety concerns that we just addressed. We are very worried about the potential for violence. Knowing that the Marxists, we're pretty sure there's going to be violence, and they're obviously planning on it. I believe 100% that the General Assembly, they're communicating this in public, they're communicating this in private. We are not going to have a red flag law passed. That is not going to happen. I know some others maybe disagree with me, but I literally talk to everybody. I talk to leadership. I talk to the backbenchers. Everybody agrees that I speak with that it's not going to happen. And I think most of us are pretty much on the same page with that. So the question is, with the risk for violence, and then also, honestly, taxpayer money, I think it costs, it's not chump change that it would cost the taxpayer to have everybody come back into town in August. Our organization sent a letter, and we asked Governor Lee, please reconsider.
What was the response to that letter?
Well, I'm happy to report that thanks to, honestly, the platforms by shows like yours and the grassroots of the people of Tennessee, and, coverage by the Tennessee Star and a lot of other places, apparently our letter got the attention of Governor Lee's administration. On Wednesday, or actually sometime on Monday, the Chief of Staff, Joseph Williams, reached out to us. The board of directors and myself went and met with Joseph Williams, as Chief of Staff, and Special Advisor Michael Hendricks. And then it was communicated to us at the meeting that Governor Lee read our letter. He looked forward to meeting with us directly. Of course, we expressed our desire to meet with him, and my understanding is that is definitely in the works, that we're just waiting on the exact scheduling. But so we were able to bring up our concerns and in fairly significant detail, reminded about the leaked recording, of course, and then we, like happens in all of those kinds of meetings, there was areas of disagreement about our concerns and about the idea of whether or not there should be a special session. But there was other areas that there was areas of agreement because, the governor has 3 years left in office, and there's a lot of other work to be done additionally on human and child trafficking.
And I want to get to that point in just a moment, but before we do, so the governor's chief of staff, Joseph Williams, meets with you, and the special advisor to the governor, Michael Hendricks. And just to reiterate what you just said, they said the governor's read your letter, and when he gets time, he wants to meet with the organization to address those concerns. You addressed those two individuals in the meeting. Do you believe, and I understand that parts of meetings like this can be off the record. I'm not asking you to violate any of those confidences, but do you believe that the governor's folks are taking the possibility of violence seriously?
I believe that they're taking it seriously. I think that our main area of disagreement, and I don't think this is talking out of school, as to whether or not there should be a special session, right? I expect at some point in time, I very much expect there to be increased security. And I thank you for giving me the out there. I don't like revealing the details, like the firm details of these kinds of meetings, until you talk to the ultimate decision maker, right? And that's
Sure.
Governor Lee himself, and we've been promised a meeting. And as a professional, obviously, I'm not going to come out from that meeting and go grab a microphone and then spew every little last detail there. But So I don't want to. I sound like I'm dodging a little bit.
No.
But, I think,
well, let me clean this up. So, I mean, because I think I know you and I know where you guys are. It feels like that you agree with me. I think we're on the same page that there's nothing that's going to be accomplished by this special session. So my feeling, and I think it's your feeling, why risk what could happen from these leftists declaring they're going to disrupt? Why take that risk if no good's going to come from it? And it seems like the governor's office, they believe that they can get something passed here, and that is why it's worth it, right?
That's a very fair way of putting it. And again, our position is, like you just summed it up. I mean, if bad stuff is going to happen, we don't think there's anything productive going to happen. Why even have it? Why give them two bites of the apple? Because they're going to come in January and, the leftists and the Marxists, they're going to stage their protests like they do every single year, probably a little more intense. But you give them August when no other legislature in the country is in session and there's nothing else going on. It's the potential for violence with 3 months worth of, as I said the other day on your show, they've got 3 months to plan this. I mean, they could turn 5,000 or 10,000 people out in 2 days. How many people are they going to turn out with 3 months to plan? So I just think the reasonable position is everybody go home, everybody stay home, come back in January, and then you could fight it out on the issues like you would normally during the normal course of government in the legislature.
Well, I'm certainly glad that the governor's office offered you an opportunity to meet with them. I hope that the governor himself sits down with you and gives you his position and helps you understand and helps, by extension, the state of Tennessee understand how he feels like or what he feels like he can get accomplished. Because every Republican that I talk to says no thank you to a red flag law, especially considering that they've not seen the totality of the evidence that resulted in the Covenant School shooting. And with that in mind, I don't know why we would go into session and waste the money. Then you add on top of that the threat of violence, and then it makes it especially frustrating that the governor is insistent that we do this. And maybe he knows something we don't know. Maybe there's a lane that he feels like we can get to that they can accomplish something. I don't know. But one good thing that did come out of the meeting, and I want you to address it before we have to say goodbye, is you did come to some common ground regarding human trafficking and child trafficking, which is something very near and dear to the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition, the idea of stopping this.
Right. And, it's one of those issues that the work is never done. And we very specifically discussed legislation, working together on legislation and working to get a path that would help children's lives, save their lives, and stop the situation here in Tennessee. So that's a really important thing. And I just want to take it aside, too. I want to be very, very clear to everybody listening. We believe what we believe about the legislature not passing a red flag. We are not resting, and we're not taking that for granted either. We're talking to them every day and making sure they're still where we are. And we here at the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition, just like we're not accepting a single child's life being lost to child and human trafficking, we are not accepting any red flag laws or anything resembling a red flag law either.
Well, keep us up to date as to when the governor schedules that meeting with you. I'm certain that they'll honor that commitment. And I share your concerns that there's a push for some semblance of a red flag law. Call it something else if you want, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, of course. But keep us up to date, Aaron, and I appreciate you giving us the update on the meeting with the governor and your statement on that meeting here today on The Drive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Aaron Gilbranson joining us. It's 521 Super Talk. Mark in Manchester says he's in favor of a special session. We'll talk to Mark and to you on the phone, 615-737-9986. It's The Drive.
A guilty verdict for a mass murderer. Minneapolis Police Department received some harsh criticisms in the Department of Justice review, and a heartwarming story for a Tennessee teenager who had a tragedy happen to her. I'll have details at 5:30. I'm Mac Morey right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you very much, Mac Morey. Hey, John Rich has reacted to Garth Brooks, his public decision to sell every brand of beer. This is a controversy that I just can't wrap my anger around. I don't really. The best part about this was the Babylon Bee headline, by the way. By the way, it's Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. It's The Drive, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Chris Webber, did you see the Babylon Bee headline?
I did not.
So, backstory. Garth is asked, are you selling Bud Light? He said, I'm selling all brands of beer. We believe in diversity. We believe in, we love everybody. We're inviting everybody unless you're an a-hole. Yeah. If you're an a-hole, there's plenty of other bars for you. And then they asked him to follow him. He said, look, I'm not commenting on this, except I'm all about diversity, always have been. I'm all about inclusiveness, and I love everybody, and that's it. And the Babylon Bee headline was, and y'all know what the Babylon Bee is, of course. Garth Brooks opens gay bar. That was let's just cut to the chase, Garth. But John Rich has reacted, and we'll let you know what that is coming up in a couple of minutes. Mark is in Manchester. Mark, thank you for the call. It says here you're in favor of a special session, sir.
I am, Matt, and I want to thank you for taking the call, and I appreciate your show in a way that I probably disagree with you more than other hosts, but it also gives me ability to think in other directions, and I appreciate some of them directions because you've actually swayed my harsh opinion sometimes when you bring up topics, so I do appreciate that.
Yes, sir, I appreciate that too.
What I have to say is this: it's really heartbreaking to me that we always seem like we're on the backup as Republicans, that the whole world's being changed by 3% of the population. And then we always take the higher road, we take the conservative road, we take the easy road, and whether we have the information that will come out, to think that we will not have a legislation special session because we're afraid somebody's going to come here and do something, it really bothers me, because in the old days and in my time, you were prepared for that and you didn't accept that. You didn't sit back and watch people burn city blocks down or loot or burn cars. You came down here, you have a job to do, you go do it, and if you got some a-holes that want to come in and act foolish, that you beat them down and you lock them up and you charge them and you move on. I just don't want this to be so we talk about, is this going to be worth it? So let me ask this question. So when that session is worth it and we're actually going to pass something, do we not think the same thing is going to transpire again? And is it okay for somebody to get beat up or shot then if they're not beat up and shot this time? I mean, where does it end? That's my point.
No, it's a good point. And Mark, here's how I'd respond. So I think you have to couple the fear of violence or outside agitation by individuals that are coming into the state and doing something like this with the reality that I think Aaron Gilbranson and Matt Murphy share, that nothing is going to get accomplished. So if I have a risk-reward, it's basically a risk-reward analysis. I am willing to take a risk if there is a reward to be had for the risk taken. But if I recognize there's no real reward, then why would I take the risk and spend the money?
I guess my point then is, should there be a risk to conduct the people's business at all about anything? Are we tolerating something we should not be tolerating at all?
Well, sure, because the political left has learned that they can agitate and disrupt and burn things and to break things and to hurt people all under the umbrella of legitimate protest, and the media and many others will allow them to get away with it. So yes, they pushed the envelope far too far, in my opinion, and I think they need to be reined back in. Now, I get what you're saying, that we should never as a society react to bullies. And that's what they try to be. They're bullies, right? They're trying to bully us around and make us do certain things by screaming louder than us or whatever. And we should never react to bullies. But my point remains that if there's no good to come from this in the first place, why would you possibly risk violence and spend a lot of money for no good?
I understand that, and I appreciate it.
And trust me, Mark, I understand where you're coming from, too. I know that you don't alter your behavior so long as you don't alter what you do based on fear or threats. You shouldn't.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. I mean, I think that's the point that you're trying to make, and it's a point well taken. Mine is a simple risk-reward analysis. There should be a reward if there's going to be a risk. If there's a risk of unruly behavior, if the reward is we're going to do something good for the state of Tennessee, then let's go. Let's make it happen. I don't see any good reward coming out of this because not enough people are going to be willing to support red flag laws, and the governor can call it whatever he wants. A red flag law by any other name remains a red flag law. It's 5:31. Good conversation, Mark. Super Talk 99.7 WTN and The Drive.
It's 5:31. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 91 degrees, and it's set to stay very sticky and very hot. Rain possible on Sunday as well as some thunderstorms. Got a weather forecast, the latest traffic report coming up. A jury in Pittsburgh today found Robert Bowers guilty of opening fire at the Tree of Life Synagogue. This was in October of 2018, killing 11 worshipers, injuring 7 more, in the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in United States history. Pierre Thomas says the verdict was a priority for federal prosecutors, even though lawyers for Bowers admitted that he was responsible.
They were deeply concerned about the fact that this was, in fact, a hate crime, that this suspect went to that synagogue to kill people based on their religion, full stop. And it was a high priority case to get the conviction. Now he's eligible for the death penalty. So in terms of the message that it sends, that's why this was a priority for the federal government to get in there, get this conviction, and make this man an example for the heinous crime that was committed.
And 3 years after George Floyd's death, the Justice Department released its report on the Minneapolis Police Department. Brian Clark gives us some details.
George Floyd died under the knee of a Minneapolis police officer, and Attorney General Merrick Garland said the Justice Department's investigation into the Minneapolis police found numerous abuses of power and disregard for the safety of people in custody.
Our review found numerous incidents in which MPD officers responded to a person's statement that they could not breathe with the version of, "You can breathe. You're talking right now."
The report also found discriminatory policing.
MPD stopped black and Native American people nearly 6 times more often than white people.
And in Nashville, Fox 17 reports that Janae Edmondson, the teenager who was hit by a car and had to have her legs amputated, will be throwing out the first pitch at the Nashville Sounds game tomorrow. The incident happened in St. Louis while she was there for a volleyball tournament. Janae's dad said she will soon be getting prosthetics. And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
I am fast running out of time. It's Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. The Drive, Supertalk 99.7 WTN. I got to go quick. 5:39. I still have these 20 Republicans, turncoat Republicans, that would not vote to censure Adam Schiff. I want to talk about that. I've got the John Wrench comments. He is responding to Garth Brooks saying, "Oh, I'm selling beer for everybody." We'll have that for you. Let's see. I've got Who's Your Daddy coming up at 6:05. I've got John Harris coming up in just a moment. But I can't go a moment further without playing this audio for you. I don't know whether to laugh or cry. Joe Biden today was speaking before a summit, a safer community summit. And I have a few highlights. And I'm building up to the end. Have you seen this, by the way, yet, Weber?
Mm-mm.
You're going to dig this. All right, John, hang in there. I know you're on the line, but hang in there. All right, first off, we got Joe Biden versus the teleprompter. This is a sad old song that we've heard before.
They will not be silent in this moment. This moment, we have to remember what I got to know him, Nelson Mandela, when I tried to get to Africa, to South Africa, to meet him. And he came back and he met me when he was finally freed. He met me at the White House. And he looked at me, and I swear to God, it wasn't unique to me, I'm sure. He said, "It always seems impossible until it gets done."
Okay. All right. So he kind of got off teleprompter there. At least he didn't claim he was arrested in South Africa. He's done that before. Then Joe Biden likes to talk about his folks, his parents, and his grandparents. Here, he's talking about his grandfather.
We have just keep going and keep the faith. Every time I walk out of my Grandpa Finnegan's house, I was going to yell, "Joey, keep the faith." My grandmother would yell, "No, Joey, spread it."
He's spreading it, all right. And then he says he wanted to meet everybody personally, but there was a storm brewing.
Now, as some of you know, I'd usually come down and say hi to all of you. They tell me there's a storm coming in. Is that right? Is that still the deal? That's the truth. Now, don't make a lie. As that scene in the John Wayne movie, "Don't make me a dog-faced lion pony soldier."
Where does he get this stuff? You know, it's like he sits around and watches the old Western Channel all the time just so he can pull these outdated quotes.
Don't make me a dog-faced lion pony soldier. That's an old one for him, but this is a new one. So he's in Connecticut, and this is how he wrapped up his speech. This is where it turns from funny to sad. Here we go.
All right. God save the Queen, man.
He's asking which way to go, which direction. He doesn't know which direction. There's a guy that came on stage. All right, so there's a guy, after he says, "God save the Queen," for no reason.
Where was this?
This was in Connecticut.
Uh-huh. Okay.
For no reason, he says, "God save the Queen." Oh, by the way, the Queen is dead. There's a king now.
Mm-hmm.
But here's...
All right. God save the Queen, man.
Says, "Go here." And then he points and says, "Go here." And then he goes this way, here. And then the guy comes on stage and says this way, after saying, "God save the Queen." That's a little...
We need those guys on, like, the runway, you know?
Well, with the little cone flashlights.
Hey, buddy. Over here.
Oh, let me get some sanity in my world. John Harris is with the Tennessee Firearms Association. Sorry, John, that happened about an hour or so ago, and I had to get it out there, maybe 2 hours ago. God save the Queen, John. How are you?
I'm just glad the Queen's doing well in his eyes.
You have to laugh to keep from crying, John. I mean, it's frightening. That man could start a nuclear war if he... Anyway.
Well, he might actually be able to see her at this point.
John, thank you. You're always so gracious with your time, whether on the drive or my normal slot between noon and 3, keeping us up to date with where we are regarding this. We call it the manifesto case, and it seems like every time we talk, 14 new lawyers are on the other side of it. How many lawyers are you fighting against now, John?
Well, Metro's got 4, and that's about average. That wouldn't bother me at all. And there are about 6 of us that are representing the various petitioner groups. But the Covenant school parties, let's see, they've got, I think about 18 spread across 5 law firms. That's the church, the school, and the parents. Then Glenn Funk has entered an appearance with an associate, and so the district attorney is now involved. And then there was an amicus brief filed by a law firm, I think, with 4 attorneys on behalf of Franklin Road Academy, Montgomery Bell Academy, Oak Hill, and St. Paul's, supporting the position taken by the Covenant School.
So that's a lot of lawyers, and Brian Wilson is a smart guy, and I heard him say on the drive several days ago that I don't know how long any of this is going to take, but I know you get 20-something lawyers in a room, and it's not going to happen quickly. I mean, this is going to take a while, is it not?
Oh, yeah. I'd say we're right at 30 lawyers total in the case.
What is the judge allowing? I mean, like Glenn Funk, for example, just as an example, and I understand that it is a pretty special circumstance that the judge would allow the Covenant parents to be a party to the case. That's not, I mean, you described it to me this way, that I know it sounds weird, but they're really not a part of this. I mean, it is a matter of the government holding documents that the Tennessee Firearms Association desires through the Open Records Act to be made public so that we can understand the nature of the investigation and the nature of the shooting. Makes perfect sense. But now the DA is involved. Why is Glenn Funk getting involved in this?
The DA and the other private schools have filed what's called amicus briefs, or friend of the court briefs. So they haven't even really moved to intervene, but they're clearly supporting the positions of the Covenant School. The DA's brief runs through some kind of analysis to try to bolster the claim that the other children and that the parents are victims under state law of the shooter's actions.
So where are we now? Give me a view from 50,000 feet about where we are and what happens next.
Right now, we're sort of on parallel tracks because of the way state law works. When the court granted intervention to the Covenant parties, that forced the petitioners to file, if we objected to the intervention, what's called Rule 3 appeals, which means we had to appeal within 30 days that ruling, or we waive the right permanently to challenge the interventions. So appeals have been filed, and the Court of Appeals has asked for briefs to be submitted on whether or not it will grant an expedited review of the intervention issue, just the intervention issues. And then the judge has issued an order setting the show cause hearings, which would be the hearing on the merits of the petitions, for July the 12th and 13th. So another month out. And the schedule makes it clear. The manifesto is, unless something drastic happens, is not going to be available by the August special session. And it's likely not even going to be available when they resume session in January. It may be 2025 or later before there's a final ruling that even tells us, are these records ever going to be made public?
John, you know how to count votes as well as I do. I mean, you've been around the General Assembly quite a bit. I understand that Lee does not need, if he tries to present anything in a special session resembling red flag, every Republican I talk to will publicly tell you that's a non-starter. Although he only needs 26, he doesn't need a majority because one would presume that he would have all of the Democrats on his side, and that's another subject. A Republican governor in this state depending on Democrats to pass legislation that most Republicans oppose, but I'll leave that for another time. Bottom line is this: even Republicans who might be predisposed to try to support the governor on this tell me they need all the information, and if they don't have some of this information that potentially could be contained in these documents, there's no way they can make an informed decision. Seems like a no-brainer to me.
I think that is exactly the position. In fact, Senator Gardenhire is actually a named party in the case, although it's in his individual capacity. And there's a letter that's been filed as an exhibit in the case
signed by 66 House members. Now, keep in mind, there are 74 House Republicans, so some of them didn't sign the letter for one reason or another. But 66 House Republicans, which would be, a two-thirds quantity of the House, have signed a letter that's in the court files now that says we want access to these records for the special session. So absolutely that's out there. And then actually we have just put up on our website video interviews with Representative Johnny Garrett, who is the House Republican Caucus Whip. And then today we released a video interview with Representative Bud Halsey, who is the chairman of the House Criminal Justice Full Committee, both of them explaining how, one, they oppose having the special session, and two, how they outright oppose the governor's proposal for a red flag law.
The parents of the shooter have gotten involved in as much as they seem to claim that the property in question in this case is theirs, not property of the state. And as a result, they are attempting to take back that property, one would presume, in the midst of all of this. If the presumption is if the Metro Nashville Police Department declares the investigation closed, that they could potentially return this property to, I guess it's intestate law, that they could return the property to the parents, and the parents have declared they're going to turn it over to Covenant School. And you and I both know if that happens, it would never be seen again. Are you aware of this? And tell me your thoughts on it, John.
Oh, absolutely. Last Thursday in a hearing, an attorney representing the parents of the Covenant shooter came to court and announced that his clients were in the process of transferring ownership of the daughter's, Miss Hale's, records, the manifesto, the collection of documents referred to as the manifesto, to the parents of the Covenant School children. And in fact, they have now filed a document with the court that attempts to transfer these records to a specific individual in the capacity of a trustee to be held for the benefit of the children and the Covenant School parents, I guess, collectively. And they specifically reference in that transfer document, including intellectual property and copyright interest. So that is something that appears to be at least getting floated out there as a potential way to block access to these records should the criminal investigation ever come to an end. But I think part of what needs to be understood is that the Open Records Act allows people to have and seek copies of documents that are in the possession of the government, regardless of who owns legal title to the document. Mm-hmm. And so just transferring ownership may be completely irrelevant other than to, uninformed listeners out there that may see a report in a newspaper that say, aha, these covenant parties now own the documents and they should be able to control them. Well, the Public Records Act may say otherwise.
Well, and real quick, only about a minute left, but just to clarify, so if the Metro Nashville Police Department tried to close the case and in doing so return the documents to the parents in a way to get around what's going on right now, you would obviously file against that.
Absolutely, because we filed timely petitions to see the documents while they were in the custody, and they can't defeat the obligation to tender the documents by saying, well, we transferred access to them to somebody else.
Got it. Makes sense. John, great stuff as always. Have a great weekend. Have a wonderful Father's Day, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you.
Yes,
Have
sir.
a good one, Matt.
All right, you too. We'll be back in just a moment. 53 after the hour on Super Talk.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. Which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here and here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you in a higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or call 615-851-1950.
6:02, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Hot and 91 degrees, and it's set to stay that way. May see some showers and storms on Sunday, and there is an air quality alert in effect from midnight tonight to midnight Saturday night. That is from those Canadian wildfires, and this is going to be for the Clarksville and Nashville areas. Forecast traffic report coming up. An apparent murder-suicide had happened overnight in Marion County at a home that was set on fire. Channel 4's Brendan Tierney has the latest details.
The TBI says bodies of the 3 adults and 3 children who were killed overnight have been brought here to the medical examiner in Nashville for autopsies. Officers say they were pulled from a burning home in Marion County after police were called about a shooting around 9 last night. It took hours to put the flames out, and at this time, officials say it's not clear how many people were shot because at least 2 died from smoke inhalation.
And a 7th person was found. It had been shot but was still alive. TBI believes that person, the person that is responsible, is one of the 6 people dead. And in Tennessee, staying here, Fox 17 says that nearly 7,000 online forms appealing the latest TCAP scores have been approved, meaning that lots of 3rd graders are not going to face retention. Now, 7,000 of those were approved. That's about out of 9,000 forms representing all those 3rd graders. 8,000 of them, or all those forms that were sent to appeal, 8,000 of those, were 3rd grade students. 60% of 3rd graders were at risk of retention because of the TCAP scores, and there are still 2 more weeks to appeal. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN entering the final hour of the week. So pleased you've joined us. It's 9 minutes after 6. My name is Matt Murphy. I'm not Brian Wilson. Brian is ailing. I'll just give a note of explanation. We did this at the beginning of the show, but I know many of you are coming in. Maybe you're off work, getting the weekend started. I want to get a taste of Wilson in the drive before you do. So Brian had a bout with the shingles about a month or so ago, and he fought it off, and eventually he had to take a couple of days just to get back with it. And I'll tell you, I've heard just awful things. Every person that's had the shingles says the same thing. They're awful. They wouldn't wish them on their worst enemy. And Brian was fighting through it, and in doing so, as he related on his Facebook page, he was taking medicine for the shingles, but at the same time, he had to time the medicine in the right fashion so that he was clear-headed when he got on the radio, because believe it or not, and I know contrary to listening to me on a daily basis from noon to 3, you have to have a clear head to do this radio show, or a radio show. And he it kind of came back on him pretty hot and heavy last couple of days. So we're thinking about him, wishing him the best, and hopefully he'll be back on Tuesday. Monday is a company holiday, and so you'll get some best of programming on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And if you are just joining us, I've got some late-breaking news and information from the President of the United States, who was speaking in Connecticut, and he wanted to, first he wanted to talk to you about
We have just keep going and keep the faith. Every time I walk out of my Grandpa Finnegan's house in Wisconsin, he yelled, "Joey, keep the faith." My grandmother would yell, "No, Joey, spread it."
Yeah, he's spreading it all right. But then he went to an old tried and true expression. Joe Biden's been saying this one for a time.
Now, as some of you know, I'd usually come down and say hi to all of you. They tell me there's a storm coming in. Is that right? Is that still the deal? That's the truth. Now, don't make a lie. As that scene in the John Wayne movie, don't make me a dog-faced lion pony soldier. You're a lion, dog-faced pony soldier.
Yeah, see, I thought it would. Thank you, Weber.
See, he even got it wrong.
It's a lion, dog-faced pony soldier, not
dog-faced pony soldier.
Lion, because the way he said it this time around, it's like, hold on, he said it.
That's the truth. Now, don't make a lie. As that scene in the John Wayne movie, don't make me a dog-faced lion pony soldier.
See, in that, the way he said it there, the pony's lying. But that wasn't even that's not even the best.
God save all right. God save the Queen, man.
There is no
I don't get it.
Reason there was. You think he meant
King?
God bless America?
Okay.
You forgot what country he was in? I mean, that would be a new low.
What was this for again? Where was he?
He was in Connecticut speaking at a Safer Communities
So there's
summit.
really even no
Had
connection.
nothing to do with England.
Yeah.
Maybe he was watching, Downton Abbey or something before.
All right. God save the Queen, man.
I love how he throws in the man. God save the Queen, man. And then he starts pointing. Which way should I go on? Anyway, so we're going to do something a little bit different in the next few minutes. Coming up just a little bit from now, if you missed my conversation, it was an incredible one with Will Scharf. That is coming up at 6:35. Will Scharf is a candidate for Attorney General. He's been a part of several different Supreme Court confirmations. He's been a noted defense attorney, and he says there are a lot of issues involving the case against Donald Trump. And I thought it a great opportunity to share some of that with the Drive listeners who perhaps were not able to hear it yesterday. That's at 6:35 this afternoon. Until then, I want to play a game. And Chris Weber has agreed to play, and young McMorey has agreed to play, a.k.a. Cougar Chow. And I'm going to play, and I want you to play along at 615-737-9986. We're calling this Who's Your Daddy? Who's your daddy? I'd forgotten about this one, Weber.
I did too.
That's
nice.
Good. Uh-huh. All right, so here's what I want you to do. This is as simple as it gets. For the next 15 minutes or so, I want you to call a 100,000-watt radio station, and I want you to describe your father in one sentence. in one sentence, I want you to tell me who's your daddy. And you'll call up, and it'll be Greg from Goodlettsville. And I'll say, Greg, who's your daddy? And then you go. Like this. McMorray's going to give us an example. While you dial in, 615-737-9986. Father's Day is Sunday. Dads get the shaft. I mean, they've written songs about it. Dads just, what did you give your dad when you were a kid? Anything?
I'd write a card, maybe draw a little picture of us. Hey, Dad.
Well, you didn't even buy one?
No.
Like Mama, she gets, whatever. She gets breakfast in bed, and you try
100%.
you go all out, and Dad knows he needs to go all out, so Dad helps.
With the kids, exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
We gotta
coordinates.
Go.
We got to go. We got to do stuff. Oh, you got to draw a little card. But for Dad, I gave my grandpa so much Old Spice. I am embarrassed to tell you. Because we would go to Harper. All right, so I'll go first and show you how this works. It's a game called Who's Your Daddy? You call up and honor your father. Well, my father was my grandfather. My dad was my biological father, obviously. He was out of my life when I was 5 years old. And thank God my grandfather was there to take up the reins and be my father. And he is the strongest, most strong-willed, most honest, hardest working human being I ever met or ever will meet on this earth. And he taught me all of the good things that I got going for me. That's my grandpa. That's Pa. All the bad crap, that's Dad. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, but man, oh man, we'd go down to Harper's, which was like a local 5 and dime, and my grandmother would give us like $5. And so the equation when you're 8 years old is, okay, what can I buy with this $5 where I give a gift, but I get to keep the maximum amount of money for myself? That was the equation. That was the equation. Well, because Harper's had pole position in Pac-Man. Come on, man.
Ooh.
What am I? So you go Old Spice. Old Spice was like $2.
Boom.
And you pocket the $3, and there you go. Tell me about your dad. Who's your daddy, Mac?
Oh, man, this is so hard. My dad is a hilarious, hardworking, extremely understanding man. And I don't want to get emotional on here, but you go through bouts with anyone that you're close with. But, you and your dad can have those moments where you're really just, head to head, not seeing eye to eye. And then you grow up a little bit. And I'm still, obviously young, but I'm old enough to see some of those moments, man, where he did not have to be as dedicated as he was all the time and be as understanding through the things that I did growing up. And he just was there always and knew what to say and knew when to say it. And yeah, that's who my daddy is.
Hey, who had Chris? Did you or I have Make McMorray cry on our?
That must have been
because
you.
whoever had
I've never done that on the radio.
You can go ahead and mark that one off. Here, I'll make you cry. You want to cry?
Yeah.
This is a true story. Well, I wouldn't tell if it weren't, but and it's a serious story. I mean this to necessarily be this serious, but this happened, and it was related to me by my grandmother. And then when the day that I graduated high school, my father was back in my life. He kind of got back in our lives when we were in our teenage years. My brother went to live with my dad because my grandpa was strict and he didn't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
So off he runs off. I never did that, but Dad kind of comes back into our lives. And I knew who my father was. I knew who my dad was. I knew who raised me. But, I didn't. I decided I wasn't going to bear a grudge against my father. I kind of was suspicious of him, but I never bore a grudge. But he told me this story the night of my graduation. He rode home with me from the graduation ceremonies and said, I want to tell you something. If it weren't for your grandfather, you would not be here. Wow. And I said, what do you mean? And I was born in September of 1973. In late spring of 1973. In Thompson, Georgia, my mother, I was unexpected, right? My brother and my sister were born, and I was an unexpected, I was a year, 2 years later, and they didn't have the money for a third kid. And the world was talking about abortion at that time. And my dad and mom convinced themselves that they were going to drive from Augusta, basically, right outside of Augusta, to Atlanta, and there was one doctor in Georgia that would perform abortions. And they were going to perform an abortion. They were going to have me aborted. And my grandfather really a man of few words. I mean, he was really hair trigger temper at that time. I didn't experience a lot of that later on in life. But as reported by my grandmother and my father, my grandfather didn't say anything. He knew what was going on. He knew what the plans were because the other two kids had to stay with my grandparents while they went and did this. They were going to stay overnight, I think. And my grandfather walked into the living room with a gun, and he sat the gun on my father's lap. And my dad said, "Cecil, what are you doing?" And he said, "Before you kill the last one, I want you to kill the first two." And he left. And apparently my mom got all upset and started crying. "Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that?" And then all hell broke loose. And the trip was canceled. So how about that?
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
That's incredible.
All right, this was supposed to be more fun. Dana, who's your daddy? Hey, Dana.
Yes, my dad. Hi, my dad is an amazing, gentle giant, always a solid object, kind, caring, compassionate, one of the hardest working men I know, and I'm just thankful that I was blessed to have him as a dad.
Is your daddy still with us?
He is.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, you going to be able to be with him this weekend?
No, not this weekend, but in a couple weekends I will be. So.
Well, I'm certain you'll hug his neck, Dana. That's great. Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
All right, take care. All right, Donald's in Watertown. Donald, I have a question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Donald, who's your daddy?
Yeah. My dad was my principal for all 12 years I went to school.
That's a tough life, Donald. Man.
And it was rough, let me tell you. But after I got out of school, he asked me, he said, "Do you want to go to college like your sisters?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "That's fine. All right, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to drive a truck like my granddaddy did." He said, "That's fine." So anyway, years went on, and me and my daddy got working on the farm together, and I drove a truck, and we got tight and everything. I lost him 20 years ago, and I'm 60 years old. And that was the hardest time in my life.
I imagine.
I lost him.
I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I've found though, Donald, and I utilized this in my life when my grandpa died in 2015 when he was 86. Is that I look at death and the pain that we go through. You know, you go to like Rock City and they have those little gym places where you've got the little shaker sandboxes and you shake the sand out of the sandbox and what you're left with. So the pain that we feel after we lose someone like our daddy is the sand. And eventually you shake and you shake and you shake that sand and that pain falls away. And what you're left with are those gems. And those gems are the memories, the good memories that you always will carry about your dad.
That's beautiful.
Well, let me tell you, every Father's Day, I go to the graveyard, and I'll leave a pocket knife. I'll buy a new pocket knife because they collected pocket knives, and I'll leave one on his gravestone. And my mother goes up there on Monday and collects them.
Oh.
And about every 10 years, she divides them up between the 3 grandchildren.
Oh, that's cool.
That's great.
That's good, man.
Love that.
I like it.
So, you know.
Well, Donald, I know your daddy's watching from heaven, all right?
I know he is too. Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. Every time I try to get over there to Chris Webber, he's answering a phone call, so I don't want to interrupt that. That's pretty cool. Pocket knife?
That's awesome.
That's great. That's all right, Kathy. Kathy, I have a question for you tonight.
Hi.
Kathy?
Yeah.
Who's your daddy? Uh-oh. Kathy dropped the phone. Are you there, Kathy? I think I lost Kathy. Kathy got very emotional. That's too bad, Kathy.
I wanted to know who her daddy was.
All right, so, yeah, I did too. Maybe we'll get to one or two more, and I got Chris Webber's coming up at 6:23. We have to do this right now at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Just enough time for a couple of callers. Who's your daddy? Super Talk 99.7 WTN in anticipation of Father's Day this Sunday. Hope you still have your dad, and if you do, hug his neck. If you don't, hug his heavenly neck. He's up there somewhere, I'm sure. Harold's got a thought. Harold's in Greenbrier, and Harold, I've got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Harold, who's your daddy?
John Fields. He was my stepfather. He married my mama, took us out of the housing projects. Mama had 7 kids. He raised us all. Good man.
That's awesome. That's great. Stepdad, good stepdad. I had a bad stepdad for a time, and that can be the worst. But good stepdads, man, it can be the best. Harold, that's great. One more. I'm just so short on time, and I think this is my Kathy that we lost earlier. Kathy?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Who's your daddy?
Kurt Vanderkleed. I lost my dad 11 years ago, and he gave the best hugs of anybody on this side of heaven. And there's so often, at 62, I think what I wouldn't give to have one more hug. He was a good man.
I'm gonna finish this up, Kathy. God bless you. Thank you. Listen, I want to real quick because we've got a pre-recorded interview coming up in just a moment. But I'm gonna finish up the Who's Your Daddy segment real quick by saying this. Well, before I do, Chris Webber.
Yes.
Who's your daddy?
Pete Weber. I'll say this about him: he is a man that never met a stranger and could find the good in anybody. That's him in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Yeah. Later on in my life, after my grandmother died in 2006, my grandpa lived 9 years afterwards. He called every day, and he was hard of hearing, and so I'm loud, and I was yelling over the phone so that he could understand me. And I get emotional telling this story, but I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to say goodnight and happy Father's Day. I would avoid his calls. Because I knew when my grandfather got on the phone, it was 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes of conversation. And oftentimes it was 30 minutes of stories that I had already heard. And so there were times when I would look at my cell phone and I would say, well, I can't do that right now. I've got to go somewhere. Or I can't do that right now. I've got to get this. Or I can't do that right now. We're about to go to dinner. I would give anything in my life for my phone to ring again. And for it to be him. Happy Father's Day to everyone. If you still have your father, cherish him, hug him. If not, cherish him in heaven and hug him in heaven. We'll be back on Tuesday. Coming up in just a moment, Will Scharf. If you've not heard this interview, it's very important on the indictment of Donald Trump. It's next on Super Talk. because of some of the comments that he made, some very careful analysis on the indictment against Donald Trump. And he joins us on the Matt Murphy Hotline this afternoon. Mr. Scharf, good afternoon. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you, Matt. Thanks so much for having me on.
I loved some of the analysis that you delivered regarding the indictment against Donald Trump, because what we're not hearing from the mainstream media are some of the accusations regarding prosecutorial misconduct in this situation. And the individual in charge, Jack Smith, has a bit of a history of certain aspects of prosecutorial misconduct. Without leading you in any way, you give 6 key points on Twitter, and I encourage people to follow you there and to read the analysis for themselves. But tell me what ranks first in your mind as something that was sort of a red flag for you when you read the indictment and learned about the case.
Sure. So I think there are 2 key points to keep in mind, and this runs counter to the mainstream media narrative, as you said, and it runs counter to what Jack Smith and the special counsel's office are trying to convince America of. Jack Smith would have you believe that this is a very open and shut case, that they found some documents with classified markings in a bathroom in Mar-a-Lago, and therefore Trump goes to prison. The fact of the matter is that this is a complicated case. It's a case that involves the interplay between 2 complicated federal statutes, namely the Espionage Act and the Presidential Records Act. It's a case that's ultimately going to turn on President Trump's knowledge, his willfulness, basically what he had in his mind when he was doing all of this stuff, which is going to be very, very difficult to prove. So that's point 1. The narrative that you're being fed about this being a simple case is wrong. Point 2, which you alluded to in your intro, is that there are serious questions with the way that this prosecution has been conducted. One of the points that I raised is a prominent Washington, D.C. lawyer who's representing President Trump's co-defendant, Walt Nauta, who's his valet and personal aide, has alleged that in the course of a conversation with a senior Department of Justice official, in order to attempt to get his client, Walt Nauta, to plead guilty, this DOJ official essentially threatened him, said that his application for a judgeship in Washington, D.C. Could be negatively impacted, which is wildly inappropriate. I'm sure it's going to be investigated. I've heard from folks in Washington, D.C., like Senator J.D. Vance's team, that they're going to be looking into this. But you add that to all of the other issues around the timing of this indictment, Jack Smith's history. It's a really problematic case in a lot of different ways. And I think that when you think about the history of this case, the absolute best day for the prosecution team is going to be that day when Jack Smith rolled out the indictment. And for them, it's all going to be downhill from here. And in my view, from here on out, things are going to look better and better for President Trump and his team.
So let me dive a little bit deeper into the attorney-client privilege component of this, because the average folks listening to this show, and yours truly included, would say, well, that relationship is sacrosanct when it comes to compelling individuals to provide information to a grand jury or otherwise. I guess there are certain ways by which a prosecution could crack and get in between that attorney-client privilege. Talk to me about ways that it is permissible and how they extended beyond that permissibility.
Sure. So as you said, the attorney-client privilege, it's a core privilege in the American legal system. Your conversations with your attorney, the government's not supposed to be able to use those against you. In most cases, they're not even supposed to have access to those conversations. In this case, the special counsel's office is relying on communications between President Trump and one of his former lawyers, a guy named Evan Corcoran. And to use those conversations, they're relying on what's called the crime fraud exception. Now, if you go out and murder somebody and then you call your lawyer and say, come out and help me bury the body, that's something that would be subject to the crime fraud exception. At that point, you're enlisting your lawyer to help you in a course of criminal conduct, and that's no longer a privileged communication. What I believe the special counsel's office is saying here, and it's a little unclear from the record, is that President Trump attempted to enlist his lawyer in obstructing justice. Now, the problem with that is that the line between asking your lawyer for legal advice, asking your lawyer what you are and aren't allowed to do, testing possible courses of behavior, with your lawyer and seeking your lawyer's opinion on really complicated legal issues. The line between all of that and what they're alleging is a blurry, complicated line. So a lot of this indictment relies on those conversations with Corcoran. My assumption is that President Trump's legal team is going to be vigorously challenging the use of that information. And I think they have a good chance of success of getting a lot of that information thrown out.
Where the media goes, and I understand that the vast majority of the media outlets reporting on this have decided the narrative they want to further in their reporting on the case. So they're not going to explore some of the things that we're talking about, Will, obviously. But they're leaning on not so much counts 1 through 31, but really the obstruction charges 32 through 37. And it feels to me as if that was the point all along, that if they can figure out a way to get a process crime out of this, regardless of what Trump's mindset might have been regarding the information, how do they make that leap between obstruction and the Espionage Act? This is what confused me, because I'm being told that intent is not a factor in charging the Espionage Act. Is that right?
No, that's not correct. At least there are very stringent mens rea requirements. There are very stringent knowledge and willfulness requirements on the face of the Espionage Act. So he's charged under, your listeners can look it up. It's 18 United States Code, Section 793E. They have to show that Trump knew that he was in possession of national defense information, which is not just classified information. It's national defense information, which is a term that's defined under the Act. They need to prove that President Trump knew there was a government official he was supposed to be returning that to. And they need to prove that he willfully retained those documents despite the fact that he knew that he was supposed to be giving them up to somebody. My view is that President Trump could claim here that he had these boxes of materials that he took with him from the White House, that he thought they were his personal records, that he thought he had designated them his personal records under the Presidential Records Act, and that therefore there was no government official who was entitled to receive those documents. I think that's a powerful legal argument, and I believe it's one that his team will explore and look at in the coming weeks. But again, the idea that just because classified information was found at Mar-a-Lago means that President Trump violated the Espionage Act, under the law, that's just not true. Now, in terms of obstruction, we saw this playbook play out during the Mueller investigation, where they knew basically from the get-go that there was no collusion with the Russians, that the whole allegation that Trump's campaign had worked with the Russian government, it was garbage from the start. But they dragged out this investigation ultimately for years into who had obstructed what and whether obstruction had occurred. And that's not the way the law is supposed to work. Investigations are supposed to be about criminality, about actual criminal behavior. And when they drag these investigations out and make them more and more and more onerous and try to find a crime to fit the person instead of trying to prosecute a person for the crimes he committed, that's a problem. And that's not the way law enforcement is supposed to work in this country. I think it's a real threat to the rule of law. Where would you suggest the Trump defense team will go first in terms of what they expect to have excluded from the trial? I mean, that's the first thing, right, is to present to the judge why certain aspects of the prosecution's case should be excluded because of misconduct, as you've described here? Sure. So I think there are four things to look for in the coming months. The first thing, I think they will likely move to dismiss some or all of the counts in the indictment. And that'll be based on legal questions relating to the Espionage Act, the Presidential Records Act, other legal deficiencies in the charges that have been brought against Trump based on the face of the indictment. So that's one. Two, as you said, I think you're going to see a challenge to the inclusion of attorney-client communications in the indictment and a move to exclude those communications from the case going forward. Three, I think you're going to see a challenge to the search warrant that was conducted at Mar-a-Lago. Now, that's been litigated to an extent already, but we're in new territory now with an indictment having been filed, and I think you're going to see a renewed challenge to the validity of that search warrant. And then four, I think you're going to see motion work relating to, as we were talking about before, official misconduct, particularly with respect to pressure applied on Walt Nauda's attorney to get him to plead guilty. To me, that conversation and that issue just reeks of official misconduct, and that could potentially undermine the entire case here. So I think those are the four things to look for in the next couple weeks.
The prosecutor in this case, Jack Smith, you're familiar with him?
Yeah, Jack Smith's a guy. He's been around for a while. I said in my Twitter thread, I'm a big law nerd, and I follow this stuff pretty closely. The thing he's probably most famous for is the failed prosecution against former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. It's an instructive case. Bob McDonnell was a popular Republican politician. He'd been governor of Virginia, successful governor of Virginia, was talked about as a potential presidential or vice presidential nominee. He was prosecuted for I believe it was federal bribery and honest services fraud charges by Jack Smith. And the case went to trial, and McDonnell was convicted. The case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, every judge on the court held that the prosecution should never have been brought, that the interpretation they used of these federal statutes was overbroad, and that there just wasn't enough material there to justify the prosecution in the first place. And the government's whole theory of the case was wrong. So that's Jack Smith's last foray into a major political case like this. And I think it's instructive because here you have the same accusation that he's using a federal statute, the Espionage Act, in an aggressive, unprecedented way. And I think that his history here really speaks to the idea that this is a guy who, one, who makes mistakes, and two, who is aggressive, particularly in these kinds of political cases, and he's gotten tripped up by that before.
Well, great analysis. Thank you so much for sharing it with the listening audience as you did on Twitter. I encourage people to follow you on Twitter at Will Scharf, SCHARF, former federal prosecutor, and seems to be an all-around good guy.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. Which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here and here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you in a higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.